Conversation.
I need to scrounge for food. Hey, look, a shipwreck. I can eat the bloated and drowned corpses.
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell, and oh my goodness, is that young Jeff Onan I see?
Not so young anymore, and also you can't see me.
Oh, well, I can pretend, and that's what we do here. We make believe. Welcome to the show, Jeff. It's been how many years since you've actually been a legitimate guest rather than just a one-word cameo on this show?
Well, let's say the last time I was a legitimate guest, the United States had a legitimate president.
Oh, he's getting political, everybody. Lock up your daughters, please.
Current events.
We've got a sex offender as president. Anyway, hello. This is, we're going to get very controversial, or as I like to say, controversial.
Or you could say we're going to continue to be controversial.
Well, this is going to be an episode. We're going to piss a lot of people off with this episode, much more than just with our political jabs. This is going to be an episode where we walk on some sacred ground, Jeff, and I haven't scrubbed my feet. This is an episode where we look at several games that have come out recently and some games that have been out for quite a long time, and try to determine, well, wait a second, is that part of the Donkey Kong universe? Now, to those of you at home who are infrequent listeners to the Kongversation, or, you know, maybe this is your first one. I don't know why this would be your first one, but it could be. You may be wondering, well, stupid. I mean, why would it be a question if it's part of the Donkey Kong universe? It should be pretty basic. Does it have a Donkey Kong character in it? Well, it gets a little bit more complicated than that. So, Jeff, for those of you who don't know, Jeff, by the way,
I'm Jeff.
Yes, Jeff Onan. He used to be a part of the DK Vine staff. He still kind of is. In that
I manage the Minecraft server.
That's right.
Vital component of the DK Vine family.
People seem to love it. So, and I don't know anything about Minecraft, so I'm glad you're there. So, Jeff, you used to be, though, a staff writer, and your area of expertise, your forte, your Will Forte, my favorite ex-SNL cast member,
and my favorite forte
was continuity and canon and making sense of this weird, glorious mess of a shared universe. And you actually co-authored the current version on the website, dkvine.com, of our DKU rules, ROOLS. It's very clever. The way
I'm not sure, but I might be the person who came up with that awful pun.
Matt.
Yeah, I don't remember. Who can say?
And Matt would have called them the Ians, knowing his go-to fake names. So, Jeff, this is, you know, I like to consider myself the fan and expert, the guy who adds caulk to all of the creeks and crevices of our obsession. But you are the only person I think in the world who could go toe to toe with me. And I think that whether or not something is DKU is almost a whole different issue than fanon. It's like a whole system of governance unto itself. You know what I mean? Well,
it goes beyond continuity and into just its own realm of logic and rules.
There's a reason we're branding ourselves, the two of us, the DKU Tribunal, because there is a lot of legalese that goes into determining what is actually part of the Donkey Kong universe. Now, Jeff, you should explain to the nice people at home who simply don't know what we're going on about. What is the Donkey Kong universe? Because it's far more complicated than it has any right to be.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that because I didn't prepare an answer at all or expect you to ask.
You could rattle this off.
Basically, okay, I think I can give a concise answer. So the Donkey Kong universe is a system of classifying a list of games which have a certain type of connection to Donkey Kong Country. And they were born out of the idea that Diddy Kong Racing is a game that features the first chronological appearance of Banjo the Bear and Conker the Squirrel. And taking that as an example of spinning off and creating these Donkey Kong Universe spin-offs, we created these rules to add all kinds of games to this list that have a certain type of connection to Donkey Kong Country.
That's right. And in recent years, I've also tried to explain it to people by also referring it to the rare shared universe. Now, that's a bit of a misnomer as well, but it helps really sell the idea, and yes, there's always going to be some sticking points here or there, but those are finer details. Broad scope of this is 1994, Rare released Donkey Kong. Well, Rare didn't release it. Rare developed it. Nintendo released it. Released Donkey Kong Country. From Donkey Kong Country, that was ground zero for this connected web of games, and we used 90s, well, actually 70s, 80s, and 90s sitcom rules to help define what the Donkey Kong universe was, because this predates the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC Extended Universe. This predates Universal's Dark Universe, rest in peace. This predates
Savage.
Everything, the whole fad. There were only 2 true examples of shared universes back when DK Vine launched in 1999. There were sitcom shared universes, and there were comic book shared universe, literal comic books.
Well, you could also say there was the Universal Monster universe.
Yeah, okay, yes. But I mean, the only active shared universes at the time.
Oh, yeah, active in the 90s, yeah.
Yes. So it really wasn't something that the general populace had any understanding of, and it was left to the realms of hardcore nerds. Maybe
the best shared universe of the 90s was the Adam Sandler film universe, but I don't think we can compete with something like that. We're a bit more we're on a lower level than that.
Granted, Adam Sandler is a brilliant craftsman, and he took meticulous care in developing that shared universe. So I don't want to besmirch the good name of Happy Madison.
Do you remember when Rob Schneider was the "You Can Do It" guy, but then he was in another movie and he was the "You Can Do It" guy again? It's like those two movies. Those two movies were in a universe together.
And let me tell you, I laughed out loud when I saw him a second time. We are live streaming this, by the way, to our $5 and up patrons, dkvine.com/Patreon. And we have a comment here by the Armcast, host of the podcast dedicated to Nintendo's new smash hit for the Switch, ARMS. And he says that Power Rangers /VR Trooper /Masked Rider /Beetleborgs is the best 90s shared universe. And as someone who's fallen down a Wikipedia wormhole about this nonsense, I would argue that only Power Rangers and Masked Rider take place in that shared universe.
I was going to say,
I don't recall any connections between VR Troopers and Beetleborgs with Power Rangers, but That's true. Power Rangers and Masked Rider were a shared universe, so
maybe instead of the episode that we planned to do, we could just list all of the shared universes that there are.
We could do that, and we would probably be here for a shorter amount of time than doing the actual episode at hand. So, I think we need to just batten down the hatches and trudge through here.
Yeah, and just a quick note. I feel like I'm putting myself at serious risk by joining this episode with you, only because this is obviously going to be just a total shitstorm, and you don't really frequent the forum like you used to. I mean, I feel like I'm really going to take the brunt of the controversy here when it comes to the forum.
Here's the thing. That's assuming we don't have a split decision. There's no tiebreaker here, Jeff. So if we can't reach a consensus, we're gonna get red in the face. We're going to be screaming at each other. We're going to get pretty damn angry during this episode. So you worry about how the forum's going to treat you. I worry about how you're going to treat me. So we all have something hanging over our head, that the axe is swinging back and forth. So all that being said, the Donkey Kong universe, it is a concept that basically is Rare was creating a shared universe that started with Donkey Kong Country. And that's all well and good, but various developments along the way have made it a bit more complicated. For example, Donkey Kong appearing in Mario games, starting with 1997's Mario Kart 64. Now, we consider those part of the Donkey Kong universe, but the important distinction to make is that doesn't mean Mario games are part of the Donkey Kong universe. It has to have an appearance by a Donkey Kong universe character in it to qualify. You can't retroactively make something part of the Donkey Kong universe because, quite honestly, and this is something I try to really sell to people who argue, well, why isn't Mario part of the Donkey Kong universe? Why isn't Shovel Knight part of the Donkey Kong universe? Why isn't etc., etc., etc.? Because literally, thanks to games like Smash Brothers and Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, whatever, with Banjo-Kazooie, hashtag IDRB, literally all of video games exists in the same shared universe.
Yeah,
so when
if you want a good
universe,
if you want a good example of this, the rules document on the website, What is the DKU? I think the first little mini essay in there is about it's just listing ways that we can cross over Donkey Kong universe characters with characters that have nothing to do with the Donkey Kong universe. I mean, you can tie in Tony Hawk, Pro Skater, God of War, freaking everything. And obviously, it's not an ideal result.
So literally, if you were going back and starting with the original arcade Donkey Kong, you could basically say, what was first, Donkey Kong or Pac-Man?
Pac-Man came out first, but they've
so
crossed over since with Mario Kart Arcade GP.
Exactly. So really, since the dawn of video games, I'm sure there's some sort of connection to Pong as well. So, I mean, all the video games take place within the same shared, we'll say multiverse, just for clarity's sake. But for our purposes, we focus here in DK Vine on Donkey Kong Country and the birth of Rare's shared universe. And that doesn't include like Battletoads, even if Battletoads do exist within the same universe or multiverse. Rare didn't actually start actively making a shared universe until Donkey Kong Country. And we are DK Vine, so that is where we focus and begin. So when we drafted the first version of this Constitution, if you want to call it that, back in 1999, it was the late 90s, and we had no idea what was coming down the pike. It was just like the founders of America couldn't foresee the world of 2017 when they, wrote the Constitution.
Right.
It has to be viewed as a living document that changes with the times, so long as we can still tap into that original intent while also modifying it for the times we live in. We're not, constitutional originalists here.
The Constitution
There's no
doesn't...
well-armed militias in the DKU.
The Constitution doesn't give the president... the Constitution gives the president power over all the branches of the military, but it doesn't mention the Air Force because they hadn't invented airplanes yet.
Exactly.
But it's implied, Boom.
So,
examples.
1999, we didn't have Toys to Life figurines. We didn't have DLC. Hell, we didn't even see the buyout coming when Microsoft purchased Rare and split the Donkey Kong universe right down the middle. So there's lots of weird things that have come up. Not weird, but it would have been weird in the context of 1999. So we have to keep with the times. And all these games that are on our plate this evening, where we try to determine if they actually take place in a Donkey Kong universe, they've been on our plate for quite some time. And the issue with a lot of them, some of them we just haven't really acknowledged, and it's just a simple matter of rubber stamping, I have a feeling. Others are going to be far more tricky, or should I say tracky. And we're going to really
I think tricky works. Tricky works if you're referencing a Triceratops.
Yes, because I think the original, really controversial, all-out internal war on DK Vine when it came to this was Star Fox Adventures.
Yeah, what I call it is a DKU nundrum, like a conundrum.
I know that's solid.
See,
I mean,
it's like
not as
the
solid
word
as
conundrum.
Controversial, but
It's like the word conundrum, but if you put the letters DKU at the beginning.
Hold on, let me get a pen and pad because I'm not quite following you.
It's like
all right, hold on.
DKU conundrum, like a conundrum. The D is a little out of place, actually.
Okay. Oh, okay. No, okay. So if you got rid of the D, then it would be conundrum, but it would just be KU, so it would be Kong Universe Nundrum, and that's no good. So you have to add the D there. Yeah.
Oh well, David just put it in the chat, so there it is. You know, looks great.
Oh, I see it. I see it. Well, if you capitalize DKU, then it makes more sense to me.
Well,
okay,
have you ever wrote DKU not capitalized? Heathen.
Actually, no. I don't think I have. So much so that when it's one of the things my iPhone suggests. One of the suggestions that pops up when I'm typing another word. I'll all the time I'll see like DKU, and I'm just like, no, I'm not trying to type DKU to my wife. Thank you.
Mine just wants to say duck.
Yeah, well, that would be Mamechi's.
Beloved, yeah. Much to the pleasure of Tony
Mamechi. Yes. So anyway, yeah, so a lot of things that have changed in the video game world since 1999, or since 1994 when the DKU was first planted in my brain, but before I had a outlet to shout this madness to the world. So, Jeff, thank you for being here, and let's convene this session of the DKU Tribunal. So first of all, Jeff, now this is a game we've talked about for the better part of 2 years, so it's kind of surprising to see it on our docket, but we've got to address this because the forum is kind of demanding we address it. And that is Yooka-Laylee, of all things. So this is something we've already signed off on. It's Donkey Kong Universe. But that has apparently become a controversial decision. It wasn't like immediately controversial. I think the controversy kind of just grew incrementally, and then it exploded. So Yooka-Laylee, for those who don't know, is the spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie, put out by Playtonic Games, which is made up of mostly former Rare staffers who left Rare over the years or were part of the 2014 layoffs. So Playtonic formed, they made Yooka-Laylee, which, in tone captures the vibe of the Banjo-Kazooie games, more or less. But two things. So, one, Ed Bryan, former banjo artist. Well, I guess you can't ever be a former banjo artist. He'll always be an artist from the Banjo-Kazooie series. But Ed Bryan, the creator of Royston the Goldfish, he's well aware of our shenanigans on DK Vine, and he snuck a goldfish in Dr. Puzz's bowl. And never named in the game, but the design is clearly Royston, and for that, it was enough. Playtonic is former Rare staffers. Ed Bryan himself put the damn fish in the game. We said it's Royston. We also had a backup plan, though, Jeff, and that was this whole notion of the DKU wrappers. And this was actually crafted by Chad before he left DK Vine. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Chad was always the pragmatic one of the two of us. He wasn't really prone to the flights of fancy I am. And so for him to come up with this, he really put a lot of thought into it. And the DKU rappers basically, we're not going to relitigate this aspect of it, but our argument was, no, they were actually characters in Donkey Kong 64 off screen, but they were recording the music video. And if there was a Yooka-Laylee rap, which Playtonic promised, with Chris Sutherland reprising his role, then it would be one of the same DKU rappers. However, the Yooka-Laylee rap isn't actually in the game Yooka-Laylee. It's so far only on Playtonic's YouTube channel. And while it's possible, nay probable, that Playtonic will be adding the Yooka-Laylee rap to a future patch or update of Yooka-Laylee, thus far it's not actually in the game. So one of our get out of jail free cards, considering Yooka-Laylee's Donkey Kong universe-ness, has been disqualified. So therefore we only have this goldfish gift. And the DK Vine forum has suddenly said, wait a minute, this cannot be Royston.
Well, we're going to talk and focus on Royston, but I just want to say that if the DKU if the Yooka-Laylee rap was in the game, I would be one of the people very strongly arguing against the DKU rapper concept. I've always been not on board with that. But we don't have to get into it. Yes. We don't have to get into it because they're not in the game anyway. So
yes,
Royston the fish.
This is where Chad and I were aligned. He really won me over to this argument. You were never won over to it. But like you said, it's pretty much a non-factor at this point. So the fish, Jeff, the fish. Now, I've made my position on this abundantly clear over the last couple years. And look, we already have precedent here. We have Goldilocks and Little Bear by Nosy Crow. Now, Nosy Crow is a studio/storybook company that Ed Bryan works for, actually co-founded, and he is head artist or lead artist, or I don't know what his official title is, but he one of the driving forces of Nosy Crow, and they make apps and interactive storybook apps for little kids. And so what happened was Ed Bryan became acquainted with DK Vine over the Twitter machine and became privy to our insanity. And what really kicked all this off was Ed Bryan started trying to appeal to Banjo-Kazooie fans. He like jokingly said, oh, this cow in this game is Bovina the cow. And he was just joking, but that kicked off this correspondence with Ed Bryan. And before long, Ed Bryan knew about the Donkey Kong universe rules and legality and whatnot. So in the game after that, it was Goldilocks and Little Bear, a modern retelling of the story of Goldilocks. And in that game, Ed Bryan snuck a goldfish in a little corner of Little Bear's room. There was also a sketch of Banjo-Kazooie, this legally skirting sketch drawn by Little Bear of Banjo-Kazooie up on the wall, and a banjo near Royston, or near the goldfish. So the intent was clear, and Ed Bryan essentially confirmed it over Twitter, as much as he could confirm it, considering if Microsoft
the legal position, right?
If Microsoft really wanted to kick up a fit about this, they could. I very much doubt they would, but there's always that danger.
2 points I want to make for those listening is, one, the DKU concept is not concerned per se with legal ownership of characters. Microsoft Corporation owns the character of Royston, but that doesn't mean that Royston cannot show up in a game not published by Microsoft. In the same way that we consider the Banjo-Kazooie series to still be connected to Donkey Kong Country.
Yes.
Even though there is a legal barrier between them. Those don't mean anything to us.
There is historical precedence for that, Jeff, because in the game Banjo Pilot, it started life as Diddy Kong Pilot, and because the Game Boy Advance team at Rare thought nobody's going to notice or care because THQ is doing a terrible job of distributing these games, we're going to just leave some aspects from Diddy Kong Pilot in Banjo Pilot. And one of those was an honest-to-log Donkey Kong character. Espresso the Ostrich is still part of one of the tracks in Banjo Pilot. And legally, they can't say that's Espresso, but it's Espresso's model down to his shoes. And so DK Vine, of course, views this as Espresso, even though legally they can't say it's Espresso. If that's the case, then Ed Bryan, the creator of Royston, could therefore put Royston in whatever game he damn well pleased. And we could say it's Royston. Do you disagree with that?
No, I absolutely agree. I'm on the same track. So another point about Royston that people get hung up on is that, so take us back to the early 2000s or the mid 2000s, and you have some of the first appearances or spin-off appearances of Royston. Grabbed by the Ghoulies, Royston appears in that game. Viva Pinata, Royston appears in that game. And at the time, those were very controversial claims to make, and we were very eagle-eyed to details. Details such as, does the goldfish tap his bowl 3 times? It almost became like it almost became a meme in and of itself that it has to have 3 taps for it to be called Royston. And their forum is concerned that we aren't looking for the same detail in these modern appearances of Royston. Now, the reason that this is the case is that over time, our understanding of Royston's place in the game has changed. We now are at a place where it is clear to us that any appearance of a goldfish is not just a coincidence. Whereas in Grabbed by the Ghoulies, it may have been a coincidence that there is a goldfish. It is now obvious that when Ed Bryan puts a goldfish in a game, he's intending it to be Royston, and that is specifically because of the Nosy Crow situation you just described. There was a game where he went around making claims or joke claims that these characters were DKU characters, and we said they were not. That's not Bovina. That's not, Banjo and a dragon from Banjo-Tooie, all this other characters.
Right.
And in response to the fandom, he made his references more explicit. And that tells us that the intention is clear and present. That the goldfish is Royston.
And the fact that the goldfish was in a Banjo-Kazooie dedicated corner of Little Bear's room, I think speaks to that. But
so we've extrapolated from that the notion that if Ed Bryan puts a goldfish in a game, it is a reference put there explicitly for our fandom, and therefore we can recognize that is Royston, the goldfish.
Yes, and it's a couple important points I think we need to hit here. One is how the nature of the relationship between Rare and its fans has, and when I say Rare, I'm speaking broad terms here. Rare and former Rare staffers still making video games. So that's what I mean when I say Rare as a general overarching term. The nature of Rare and its relationship with its fans has changed dramatically since 1999. Because back in 1999, there was just correspondences with Lee Loveday on Scribes on the old Rare website. That was it. And there was this level of disconnect, as there probably should be, between professionals and idiots like us. But over time, DK Vine being around for as long as it has been, and Rare being around for as long as it has been, and the advent of social media and whatnot, we know each other at this point. And Rare's in on the joke as well. Whereas back in, say, Viva Pinata, its era, a goldfish that looks like a pinata in the game may not have been clearly designed to be Royston. Lee Loveday retconned it as Royston for us. That's Royston disguised as a pinata. But Rare now knows exactly what we're up to, and I don't want to say they cater to it, but there are Rare staffers who are catering to it. And I think we need to look at Connect Sports Season 2 for a good example of that. They explicitly snuck Royston in, sneaked. Snuck isn't a word. They sneaked Royston in Connect Sports Season 2 because of our belly aching. We were arguing back then, hey, if you just hide a goldfish in Connect Sports, we will cover and play and support Connect Sports. They did that. They put Royston. He is in the driving range mini game where you basically use a golf club to whack items across the bay, and Royston is one of those items. And that, I think that was the first instance beyond just them sneaking the cameo and Grab by the Ghoulies, which is where all this started. They put Banjo's goldfish in Grab by the Ghoulies, but after that, like Royston wasn't really a thing. It became kind of a meme on DK Vine, and from there it went back to Rare, and now Rare is fully aware of the Royston thing, as are people like Ed Bryan, who used to work at Rare and play Tonic themselves. So here's another point that needs to be made at this point. At this point in the discussion, is how we determine what a thing in a game is and why. Okay, that's not a great way of describing it. I've had a few beers. That's a terrible way of describing it.
I've had a few beers, but give it a couple more sentences and it'll make sense.
Okay.
When you have a goldfish in a game, how do we come to a point where we say that's Royston and that's DKU? Well, first of all,
ways to go about it. Yeah.
The first thing and the most important thing about whether something is DKU or not is the in-game evidence. So what is in the game? If there's something that so explicitly contradicts the idea in the game, then we have to follow that. Then you, on a lower tier than the in-game evidence, you have like word of God and the developer's intention. So developer's intention can inform how we interpret in-game evidence, and the word of God can inform how we interpret the developer's intent and how we interpret in-game evidence.
Yes.
And so,
exactly.
Yeah, there's sort of a hierarchy there to what evidence holds value to us. And I think that the fact that this whole Goldilocks and Nosy Crow situation happened sort of has put us at a point where we accept the developer's intent immediately as being that Ed Bryan intends that to be Banjo's pet goldfish. Even when Word of God itself contradicts that. And I'm referring to who was it that said this? Word of God, somebody at Platonic said explicitly that it was not connected, that Yooka-Laylee was not connected to the Banjo universe.
I believe that was Grant Kirkhope that said that.
I was thinking it was, well, I don't know. Anyway, somebody said that, and it's obviously sort of a PR thing. You know,
right?
They
can't
asses,
say yes.
They can't say that the fish is Royston. But based on the precedent and history surrounding Royston and Ed Bryan's relationship with our fandom, we know that the developer's intent is for it to be Royston, and nothing in-game, there's no in-game evidence that contradicts that.
There is not, and that's an important point. Another important point that I was going to bring up was that a goldfish can't just be put in any random video game and you can say that's Royston. There has to be a Rare pedigree behind it for it to have any validity. We don't have to concern ourselves with who owns what. Because let's be honest, I don't even know if there is a trademark for Royston the goldfish at this point. You know, it probably doesn't even exist. But we don't concern ourselves with that. But there has to be some sort of
connection. If there's a connection to Rare or former Rare staff, it lends some legitimacy to the notion that a nondescript goldfish is Royston when the in-game evidence doesn't support it. So in-game evidence would be, for instance, the goldfish tapping 3 times. That would be pretty powerful. However...
but I would argue that Royston doesn't even always have to tap 3 times. That was
right.
That was an early idea based on his solitary original appearance in Banjo-Kazooie, but Royston has grown so much as a character.
Cameron mentions in the chat here that he does not tap in Banjo Pilot, as an example, and that's only his third appearance ever. So I don't think tapping the bowl is a necessary component of Royston. I agree with you,
Jeff, you're so full of shit. You're so full of shit. That was like his 5th appeerance.
Well, counting is not something that I consider one of my strengths.
Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Banjo-Kazooie Grundy's Revenge, Grabbed by the Ghoulies, Banjo Pilot. 5th appearance.
Actually, I couldn't remember the exact chronology.
Edition? Shit.
I could not remember the chronology of those games. Good job for remembering them. But just keep in mind that I was only a fetus when Grabbed by the Ghoulies released. Because I'm so much younger than you. I'm so much younger than you.
No.
It's not. I have a beard. I'm a man, damn it.
You could just be a 14-year-old with a glandular disease, but okay. So we're basically, we're in agreement here. We're just litigating these facts, these cold hard facts for those who just can't see our perspective.
Right. The logic is the Royston in Yooka-Laylee is Royston, or the goldfish in Yooka-Laylee is Royston because Ed Bryan put him there, and our sort of fandom's relationship with Ed Bryan has a history that implies that connection.
By the way, Andy Robinson, the Platonic writer, even mentioned on Twitter when they revealed the character of Dr. Puzz and then the goldfish in Dr. Puzz's bowl, Andy Robinson replied to DK Vine on Twitter saying that he knew we would be the first ones to notice that. So that was a wink, wink, nudge, nudge from the writer of Platonic. So as you said, they have to keep up this like official PR line that says, no, this is his own thing. It's not connected to Banjo-Kazooie. But clear author intent, even if it's unspoken, is there for the goldfish to be Royston.
And you also have to take into account that both Rare and Platonic and these other individual entities, like, Nosy Crow, or just the individual human beings, they're all different people. Platonic isn't a hive mind.
It's not, no.
It's composed of many individuals, and those individuals all have different intentions. But when, say, who would you say is the head honcho at Platonic? Like the number one? Is it Males or Sutherland, or I don't?
No, I would say Chris Sutherland, and then Gavin.
Gavin Price? Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, you pick one of those guys and say that they tell you straight out to your face that fish is not Royston, but they're not speaking to what Ed Bryan's intentions are. They're not one entity per se.
Exactly. And it's also worth pointing out, too, that DK Vine fully acknowledges that Platonic is trying to build its own shared universe. So I don't want people to think we're doing it a disservice by just mucking everything up and trying to wedge it in with Banjo and Donkey Kong and Conquer. We fully acknowledge that Platonic is its own independent thing. It's not married to Rare Limited, and they're building up their own lore. Just from a purely practical perspective, DK Vine rationalizes it that Platonic, all these things are just taking place in their own corner of what we call the Rare Archipelago. But that's more of a fanon thing. That's not really legal, or really has any relation to what we're discussing here. So, but I just want to get that out in the open because I feel almost dirty when I try to argue that it's part of the Donkey Kong universe, because I realize how that looks and sounds, and but what are you gonna do? It's got a goldfish in it. I mean, guys, come on.
It has a goldfish in it. Is the thing. So, wrap
all
it
right,
up.
Jeff.
Move it on.
So let's have a ruling. I feel like we're unanimous here. Yooka-Laylee, DKU or not?
DKU.
DKU, absolutely. Let me bang the gavel. Yooka-Laylee is DKU.
Now, we're not going to go right into this, but the character of Yooka will come up later on in this episode.
Oh yeah, that's going to be fun.
Little foreshadowing there for you listeners.
While we're talking about Ed Bryan, let's get this over with. So I mentioned Goldilocks and Little Bear. This is a controversial addition to the DKU. It was the end of 2015 that Goldilocks and Little Bear, I almost gave it away. Goldilocks and Little Bear came out on your app stores and guess Google Play, maybe. Is it on Google Play? Yeah, it's probably on Google Play.
I think it's on microwave ovens. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Obama really loves Goldilocks and Little Bear when it's in your microwave oven.
Current events.
Anyway, Goldilocks and Little Bear had a Royston in it. Introduced some. Well, I guess you can't really call them new characters, but it introduced modern iterations of the classic fairy tale characters, Goldilocks and the bears.
Them bears.
Them bears with the
which of them bears is best? A debate for a future episode.
Yes, that is true. And if we're adding the Little Bear family into this argument, then I have a feeling they would still all lose. So, I mean, yes, look, we're not insane. We know Goldilocks and Little Bear is an app designed for children. We're not trying to sit here and say, no, you just don't understand it on the level that we understand it on. It's so much more nuanced than that. It's a delightful interactive storybook for kids,
and it's full of delight.
It is. It's
full
of pancakes, and families trying to eat breakfast, and you pick berries, and it's great. And there's a butterfly that acts as the devil on your shoulder.
You've actually played this. This is something you have this on your cell phone, your mobile phone.
I have it on my
device.
iPad. That
is a mobile device. Yeah. Okay. I don't know why I'm shocked by that. I didn't think any human being actually had these. I guess if you want to call them games. I did not experience them. Sorry.
Chad and I did a whole conversation about it. We did a Goldilocks and Little Bear first impressions episode.
That's the one episode I didn't. That's the one I didn't listen to.
It's a good one.
I'll go back.
So anyway, Royston is in the game. And by the way, the nature of Royston, if you haven't figured it out, ladies and gentlemen listening at home, or gender undecided, excuse me, is that Royston is... He gets around the Rare Archipelago. He gets around the Donkey Kong universe. He's a goldfish always looking for a home where he won't be abused. And because of that, he
and
winds
he's looking in all the wrong places.
He clearly is. So at one point, Little Bear gets possession of him. And I think the implication is that Little Bear knows Banjo and Kazooie somehow, because it seems like some things have been gifted to him. I
don't want to say that Little Bear is a relative of Banjo, as many on the forums would have suggested, because that's kind of racist. Like,
kind of, yeah.
Every bear that knows another bear must be. It's like, oh, are you guys brothers? Are you cousins? Are you guys
all bears know each other?
Brothers.
Look, just because there's 14 bears that are related to each other in the Northern Hemisphere doesn't mean that all bears are related to each other.
Yeah, where are all the girl bears in the whole world? Tootie, I guess,
There's Tootie, yeah, and there's Boggy's wife and his daughter.
She exists. Okay, yep. There you go.
Anyway, so
we got a little off track there. So
yeah. Royston, he gets around, and I don't really know what Little Bear actually is in relation to Banjo, but they know each other. And actually, I don't think Little Bear. He doesn't have the same type of hands. He has like claws. He and his family have like claws on their hands because they're not like honey bears as designed in the Banjo-Kazooie games, but they are some sort of bears. So,
hot take: Little Bear is a bear.
He's some sort of bear. You heard it here first, folks. Anyway, Royston's in the game, and that makes the game Donkey Kong Universe. And when Royston is in a game, specifically when he's in the start of a franchise, we classify that franchise as a Donkey Kong Universe franchise. It's not just a cameo appearance, like, say, Donkey Kong appearing in Mario Kart.
Right, and I think that we will get into the definition of a cameo game in another game down this list, whether we're talking about Tracky Train.
Yeah.
But yeah, the distinction between a full DKU spinoff and a cameo game is certainly something relevant.
And honestly, we could sit here and argue all night about, say, Connect Sports Season 2, or Connect Sports Rivals at this point. Connect Sports Season 2, the only reason we classify Connect Sports Season 2 as a cameo game, despite Royston being in it, is because it's a sequel.
Right.
It's not ground zero of the franchise.
Royston appeared in a pre-existing franchise of Connect Sports.
First time he's ever done that, by
Goldilocks and Little Bear is not a pre-existing franchise. It is the ground floor. It is a brand new franchise spun off from Banjo via Royston's appearance.
Via Royston, just like Grab by the Ghoulies and Viva Pinata. So, and just because
and
Rare...
Yooka-Laylee.
Yes, and just because Rare Limited did not develop Goldilocks and Little Bear doesn't mean it can't be granted that same legal status. It is the start of a new DKU franchise. I
think that another factor we haven't really discussed that I remember when this came out, there was a little bit of disagreement or non-agreement over the idea of the character of Goldilocks.
Yes, I wanted to bring this up. Yes.
So the character, obviously, the character of Goldilocks predates the game Goldilocks and Little Bear.
But, Jeff, this
at least
iteration...
the concept of the character.
The concept of Goldilocks does. I will agree with you there. But this version of Goldilocks, she is a modern girl, living in the modern world, material girl, you might even say. She's living in contemporary times with her family in the forest. Little Bear and his family are also contemporary. This doesn't take place in them olden fairy tale times. I would argue that because of that, these are original characters merely inspired by the fairy tale characters. So this iteration of Goldilocks is DKU.
Right. Just as an example, Guy Ritchie made a movie this year about King Arthur.
That's right.
If he made another movie next year...
You were the only person to see that, by the way.
I didn't see it. I don't plan to.
Oh, no,
Sorry,
nobody
Guy.
saw it.
Sorry, Guy.
Speaking of Madonna,
Guy might have seen
Ritchie.
it. Anyway, if Guy Ritchie made another movie in a couple years that was about some other classical character, and then he had King Arthur in it, and it was the same actor from his King Arthur movie, you would assume that this second movie is in the same universe as his first King Arthur movie, even though the concept of King Arthur is this classical, maybe this example got away from me.
Well, you know what? In the Twitch chat, right, earlier, the Armcast brought up the Power Rangers, VR Troopers, Mask Rider, Beetleborgs shared universe in his words. But he said that Santa Claus appears in Beetleborgs and VR Troopers, and it was the same actor playing Santa Claus. So that might be a connection between Beetleborgs and VR Troopers. So, Santa Claus, of course, predates those shows. If that's the same iteration of Santa Claus,
right,
unique,
the developer's intent
that would be the same thing.
Is for it to be the same character.
Yes.
It's the developer's intent can inform our in-game evidence. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. So this is good. This is healthy discussion. I'm glad we're getting this out in the open because too many people have been wandering the streets for too long, not realizing how our version of Goldilocks' mom relates to the fairy tale version of Goldilocks' mom.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I have to say about that. But
by the way,
Goldilocks and Little Bear is not the game that we would like to discuss today, actually.
No. It is a potential sequel to Goldilocks and Little Bear. And this has been out for a while now, and we shamefully have ignored it. There is a new storybook.
Wait. This already came out?
Yeah.
Oh my god. I feel bad. All right. I knew it existed. I just didn't think it was out already.
We're slipping more than Jimmy McGill here.
Slipping more than a slipper on a slipper roof in Donkey Kong Country 3 with the character.
More than a slipper in Slip Slide Ride.
That's the name of that. Slipper's Slope or whatever it's called.
This new storybook app, we can call it a game. I mean, technically, it's a storybook app, but it's
an experience.
It's an experience. It's a virtual interactive experience,
and it is called Fairytale
Play Theatre.
Okay, yeah,
theater with the R before the E, so it's extra fancy,
bougie, AF, hip lingo for the kids.
Let me read to you what this says, okay? This is the description from Nosy Crow's website.
They have a website. Oh, okay.
I provided you the link to it, Jeff.
Well, I'm going back between multiple windows here. It's a lot to take in. But
yes,
go ahead.
they are a company in 2017. They do have a website. All right. Welcome to Fairytale Play Theatre, a brand new kind of app experience. Set the stage, choose your characters, and create and record your own story. Choose one Fairytale bundle when you download the app. Others available as additional in-app purchases. Features rich artwork from Nosy Crow's award-winning series of Fairytale apps. The Three Little Pigs, Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, Jack and the Beanstalk, Snow White, and Goldilocks and Little Bear. Over 60 characters to choose from, along with dozens of scene backgrounds and props to bring your story alive. Soundtrack your story with stunning music from our fairy tales, along with your own voices and sound effects. Create your own brand new stories or retell our fairy tales in your own words and voices. With a hugely intuitive, user-friendly interface that's perfect for young children or men in their 30s. I added that one. Create individual scenes from scratch, save them, and build multiple scenes into a complete story. Multi-touch screens allow multiple users to create stories together. Well, Jeff, we could create our own story together.
Nah.
That's amazing.
I can't because you already said it's for children and men in their 30s. But sadly, I am only in my 20s.
Yes.
I'm not invited.
I already said that. A fantastic way of creating stories, encouraging imaginative play, and sharing a device between adults and children. Great for storytelling activities in classrooms and at home. And Jeff, what is not the Kongversation, but the world's finest classroom? Now,
Kong College.
Yes. So this is, in a lot of ways, I would say similar to something like Project Spark in that it lays the groundwork for you, but then you could kind of create your own adventure with pre-existing characters, much like we could with Conker and Birdie and some Teddies and the googly-eyed keys in Project Spark. So here we are.
It's actually surprisingly a kind of loaded example. So there's really multiple layers to this.
So many layers to peel. Now, I shamefully have not downloaded this one yet. Whoops.
I only recently learned that this game has released. So more shame over here.
So I don't know if Royston is actually in this. I very much doubt Royston is in this. But if scenes like scenery and backgrounds come along. Perhaps Royston's in it, but Royston isn't really even relevant to this discussion because we know Little Bear is in it. At the very least, Little Bear.
And Goldilocks.
Yeah. I mean, characters from Goldilocks and Little Bear are in it. Specifically, you can see screenshots, and Little Bear is definitely part of that.
So the loaded. Let's just kind of dissect this one little bit at a time. The first thing you said about the game is that it is sort of like Project Spark, in that it is not really a game unto itself, but more of a toolkit to create your own stories. Which
still counts as a game.
Right. And what we ruled with Project Spark and with, for instance, Minecraft or whatever, is that there doesn't have to be a narrative or even a game world or location for a game to be DKU. It just has to have the character.
It has to have that juicy, nougaty-centered character. That's right. So, as we already established, Goldilocks and Little Bear is a DKU franchise. So if characters from Goldilocks and Little Bear appear in this, it's DKU, without question.
Right. Now, what is within question is whether or not Fairytale Play Theatre itself is a DKU spinoff of Goldilocks and Little Bear, or it is a cameo game.
So this is actually a good argument. And now, for the record, as of this point in time, it really doesn't matter. It might matter down the line, and we could always just kick that can down the road for later.
But... No. That's why we have an episode. This is that's why there's an episode here, you and I together to discuss this.
Oh, but Jeff, we can always reconvene.
There will never be
tribunal.
A kicking of cans. Well, there will probably be another tribunal.
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling this is going to be the first in a series of episodes, much like Goldilocks Little Bear is the first in a long, illustrious
a 9-part series.
Games. Yes, just like Chief Plodosin. Okay, we'll try to refrain from kicking the Chimp's bean can down the road. Guffo. That's a Banjo-Tooie reference, by the way. So we'll try to refrain from that. But for now, that's always an option if we can't agree on this. We agree this is DKU though. So
I think we both agree that Goldilocks and Little Bear are both DKU characters.
Yes.
And they're not precluded from being DKU just because they're based on a pre-existing concept of characters. The concept
this has a lot
of
to do with Donkey Kong, by the way. I really hope somebody just discovered this podcast this week and was like, oh boy, I love Donkey Kong Country.
I love DKC. Yeah.
We spent the last 40 minutes talking about fucking
Actually, I
Fairytale.
hope it's an arcade fan and that they jumped into this. Donkey Kong, what? I loved playing that one in the arcade. Back with the chorus
my favorite.
Yeah. I don't know what that accent was, but that's it.
That's a new Donk resident right there.
A new Donk City. Yeah. I loved playing it anyway.
Yeah. By the way, if you guys haven't figured out why we don't cover the arcade games, then you weren't paying attention. We didn't explicitly say it, but we gave our reasonings.
It starts with Donkey Kong Country because we said so.
Because it's when Rare
and we said so
started.
because we're focused on Rare's interpretation of the character.
We don't disagree that the Donkey Kong arcade games happened in the backstory of Donkey Kong Country,
but they don't qualify to the list of games that are DKU, and they don't affect the DKU-ness of other games.
Because then Mario, every single Mario game would be part of the Donkey Kong universe, and that would stray too far away from the Rare factor.
Right. It'd be like with the next mainline Mario platformer be DKU. It'd be crazy. It would just never happen.
It would be ludicrous. That would never come to pass. So Jeff, here this is tricky, and not the Star Fox Adventures / Diddy Kong Racing character. This is something. We have to have some thought exercises here, to really suss this out. So, once upon a time, Jeff, there was going to be a game put out by Rare called Saberman Stampede. And Saberman Stampede went through a lot of iterations. It started life as Donkey Kong Racing. And before it became this kind of open world game where you captured animals with the character Saberman, it spent some time kicking around as another racer, and at one point it was going to be a racer with several Rare characters from across Rare, like the history of Rare. So you'd have characters from Banjo, probably Conquer, Saberman, Battletoads would probably be in there somewhere.
Jet Force and Perfect Dark.
Right. So would Saberman Stampede, if we ever got that version of Saberman Stampede or whatever it would have been called, would that have been a cameo game? Because that would have been made by Rare. Like,
well,
would that have been the start of its own franchise, or what?
Let's discuss something real quick. So,
okay.
What is a cameo game? In the very early days, we kind of generally described it as when a DKU character appears in a franchise that existed before the game that DKU character appeared in.
Yeah.
So Donkey Kong appears in, Mario Party, but the Mario franchise pre-existed before Mario Party, so it's a cameo game. But that's not a very good definition, because as an example, a game called Super Smash Bros. Exists. And Donkey Kong appears in that game, but the Super Smash Bros. Franchise did not exist before the game Super Smash Bros. And yet, we consider the game Super Smash Bros. To be a cameo game. Why? Yes. Why do we call it a cameo game? Well, there's two ways that we can describe it. I think that for a while, Matt had kind of coined the term, and some of us ran with it, was the phrase, the largely original cast. If a game starred a largely original cast, then it was a spin-off. Whereas if the cast was not original, it was a cameo. Smash Brothers is a new franchise, but it is not a franchise of new characters. It is not an original cast. They are pre-existing characters. But we've kind of, that terminology has kind of fallen by the wayside, and we've kind of come to a new terminology and nomenclature, and that is the massive crossover rule. And the massive crossover rule was kind of decided on with hashtag IDARB. But it's this idea that if a game, even if a game is a brand new franchise unto itself, if that game is a massive crossover of multiple franchises, it is by default a cameo game.
Right.
And that rule or law, which is not written in the rules, ROOLS, but it's an unofficial rule. It applies to Smash Brothers. It applies to IDARB. It probably applies to Minecraft. I would argue that it applies to this game, the Fairytale Play Theatre. What do you think of that?
Well, because it is full of all these characters from Nosy Crow's earlier apps, predating Goldilocks and Little Bear. And I mean, here's the thing. Intellectually, let's look at this. If there's any original characters whatsoever anywhere to be found in Fairytale Play Theatre, and if they would later appear in their own game, could we in good conscience say that game is DKU? And I don't think we could.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I'm in agreement. Yeah.
And okay, here's another thought process for those of you at home. A little thing to ruminate on if you're having trouble with this concept. So the game hashtag IDRB, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like futuristic soccer. It's vertical soccer. It's soccer played along a wall, and you like hop around and you kick a ball. It's good fun, but it's full of lots of video game characters from across a myriad of franchises that have some sort of relation to Microsoft. So you got the rare characters and a whole Killer Instinct team as well. But you also have some original characters. And one of the original characters in there is a glass of orange juice. A sentient glass of orange juice playing futuristic soccer. So if there were to be a game put out down the line called Sentient Glass of Orange Juice, OJ, we'll just call him OJ.
The juice is loose.
If the juice were to be loosened, I really don't think we could say that would be DKU because, again, that would be straying from the fundamental rareness, the rare factor. And as much as I may love Glass of Orange Juice as a character, and by the way, we do have Glass of Orange Juice in our image gallery. And you know what? I just clicked on it right now, and the caption says "The Real Murderer of Ron Goldman." So I'm glad we were already ahead of ourselves with that joke. A game starring Glass of Orange Juice could not possibly be Donkey Kong Universe because that's straying way too far from the rare factor. The only difference with this, though, Jeff, is that this has got Ed Bryan's tendrils, his tentacles are fully up the backside of Fairytale Play Theatre. So there is more of a rare factor here. But again, I guess that's why we have to go back and look at something like the aborted Phantom version of Saberman Stampede, or the Fast and the Furious, or all these rare crossover games made by Rare that never actually came to be.
Yeah, that's an interesting dilemma you're presenting, because I think that what you're suggesting is sort of an innate or intuitive feeling. Is if there were a Rare crossover, it would be almost intuitive not to call it a cameo game,
right?
Even though it would feature appearances by franchises that are not DKU, Jet Force Gemini, Killer Instinct, Perfect Dark. These are franchises that are not DKU, but this is a game made by Rare with a crossover of Rare characters, many of which are DKU. And you're arguing that, that intuitively we would want to say this is a great new Donkey Kong Universe franchise or spinoff. And I'm worried that the intuition of that kind of goes against the precedent we've set with other examples.
Here's the thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a good example of when the rare factor would get us in trouble would be Saber Wolf for the Game Boy Advance. Now, this is a game that people are still on our case about, which I don't know why, because nobody ever played it. It's one of these THQ releases that had a distribution of maybe a dozen worldwide. So, but this is a game that people argue, no, this should be Donkey Kong Universe. I don't care if Saberman first appeared on the Spectrum way back in the 80s. The system, by the way, I wasn't saying he was somewhere on the Spectrum. He might be, and good for him if he is. But because the modern incarnation of Saberman first appeared in Banjo-Tooie, and then Saberwolf for the Game Boy Advance came in light of that, people argue that game should be Donkey Kong Universe. But in that case, we have to stay true to our ethos and say, no, I'm sorry, Saberwolf Game Boy Advance is not Donkey Kong Universe. As much as we want it to be, the rules just don't work in its favor.
Right.
We have to be honest to the rules, or else this whole thing falls apart.
I think
like
part of the
blocks that they are.
Part of the rules and part of the appeal, or maybe not the appeal, but part of just the very DNA of DK Vine is rigidly sticking to some degree of semblance to the rules, even when it would go against our intuition or our desire. And I think I would pretty strongly argue that a Saberman Stampede Rare crossover would have to be a cameo game.
And you know what? Prior to sitting here with you in this convening of the DKU Tribunal, I would have probably disagreed with you. But because we've had this mature and intellectual discussion like adults, I have come around to your way of thinking, and I completely agree. So I would think Fairytale Play Theatre would be a cameo game.
Right. And it's a cameo game because, just to recap for the listeners, it is a game which features a crossover of multiple franchises, or what you could refer to as franchises, multiple characters and individual games, one of which is DKU, but many of which are not DKU. The end result being it's a cameo game.
Well, there we go. I mean, was that so hard? I don't think so. So there we go. Fairytale Play Theater is DKU, but it's a cameo game. All right. Now, that was relatively easy, Jeff, and we may not have agreed on 100% initially, but we had a melding of the minds. Let's see if we can do that for this one.
Oh, Jesus.
This one. Oh, yeah. Here we go. This is the one we have not been waiting for. Tracky Train. What the fuck is Tracky Train, Jeff?
Well, first off, I'm just going to promise to the listeners that we're going to call the game Tracky Train. And what I mean by that, I'm referring to sort of an ongoing joke when myself or others on the forum refer to the game and just get the title wrong every time we mention it. I don't think I can keep that up in a live audio medium. So I'm not going to call it Trekkie Track and Tracky. I can't keep it up. So we're just going to call it Tracky Train. But Tracky Train is a game released for the mobiles.
Well, it's in the app stores and what have you.
Right. That's what he said. And it is a game in which I guess you control the path of a train. Is that what it is? And you pick up pick up customers, right? They get on the train.
I went to download this, and then my iPad, I realized I hadn't turned it on in months, and it had to download the new version of iOS to let me download the new.
I've actually played this one. I've actually played this one, but
so
I don't remember.
You're the expert here. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm the expert.
All right.
I am the expert. I'm like a horse leading a dog. Basically, the gist of it is that there are little characters in the game that are sort of people that as you control the path of the train.
Hold on. You're cutting ahead. You're derailing the train from the track.
Whoa! All right, go ahead.
So it's important to establish what the development team behind Tracky Train is, and it's one of the important elements of this argument. It's put out by Crash Lab Limited, and Crash Lab Limited, it's made up of, you guessed it, former Rare staffers. I was expecting more of a response there. Okay, so Steve Ellis, who was a founder of Free Radical. Remember that?
Wait, really, Steve? Oh yeah. My God! I've been following a Free Radical since they existed, but I didn't know Steve Ellis was he left the company.
Steve Ellis, he's the managing director and technical director of Crash Lab. We've got Martin Wakely, who was also at Rare and then went to Free Radical. And then we've got Lee Musgrave, and former head of art at Rare. And,
I'm also seeing Graham Norgate is also on this list here. I'm seeing
Graham Norgate, beloved DKU composer, Donkey Kong Land, baby.
The last I knew, anyway, it doesn't matter, but yeah.
It doesn't. Graham Norgate, that doesn't matter.
I was going to say, I thought last I knew he was still with the current remaining existence of Free Radical, which I believe is Deep Silver games, but I'm sure he can do multiple projects. He can do a mobile game.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So in this instance, Crash Lab is basically another Nosy Crow, or a miniature Playtonic. It's a bunch of Rare dudes. That's what they are. And these are not just Rare dudes; these are household names in the Rare fan community. So that's what Crash Lab is. So it's important to jump out ahead and establish that when we talk about why Tracky Train might be DKU, because it's important to establish the Rare factor, the Rare pedigree. It's plainly there.
Well, and that's okay. I might get us a little off track here, but I'm not entirely
off Tracky
Train here. I'm gonna take the train off anyway. I'm not entirely sure how I like the notion of the Rare pedigree or at least the way we're presenting it. There's nothing in the rules, at least if you just read the rules, if you just had a page of text, there's nothing in there that says that that games made by Rare have more value to them than a game made by not Rare, or games with Rare staffers is more valuable. There's nothing in the rules about that. And I think that's something we need to speak to.
There is, though. There's an old rule that people still harp on me about and try to ruin my day at least once a week with this rule that speaks. It doesn't specifically lay out the rare factor, but by the way, I stole the rare factor from the making of Rare Replay, because when they were compiling the games for Rare Replay, they tried to pick the ones that had the rare factor above all else more than some of their other games. So that's where I borrowed that term, and I was like, well, that would be perfect for Jeff and I's bullshit. So there is something in the original iteration of the rules, which, by the way, were written in 1999 before Rare was purchased by Microsoft, when they were still with Nintendo, and before we had any reason to fathom the notion that they would ever not be with Nintendo. And that was the Pepito Kong rule. Now, the Pepito Kong rule, Jeff is tearing up. He's sobbing openly.
Oh, yeah.
Upon the mentioning of Pepito Kong. The Pepito Kong rule is something that really cannot apply in today's day and age, but we can ascertain quite a bit from it. So,
and let me just say that in the most modern incarnation of the rules, which I co-wrote with Matt Corna, and I will admit that those rules are themselves out of date and need an update. But in those edition, we removed the Pepito Kong rule. They had actually already been removed from the main page. But within the 7 pages of sub-essays, we did make mention of it as part of the as a peripheral part of the rules canon.
I would argue that, so it's kind of like junk DNA. It's DNA in the rules that is no longer actually being used, but it's still very much part of the body of it itself. And
I think that what we can say now, without explicitly saying that Rare has more value than another developer, which maybe they do, but without explicitly saying that, we could say that Rare staffers or former Rare staffers have more pull over our intuitive interpretation of in-game evidence by usage of developers' intention.
Well, Jeff, we haven't really explained what the Pepito Kong rule is to the nice people at home.
Yeah, but do they need the Pepito Kong? Okay, well, just do it. Just get it over with. Just do it.
Okay, so this was a 1999 mindset around the time of Donkey Kong 64's release. So Donkey Kong 64 introduced 3 new Kongs, which shockingly were at the time owned by Rare. This was only the status quo for 3 years. When the buyout occurred, there was a hostage exchange of rights. And Chunky Kong, Tiny Kong, and Lanky Kong were owned by Rare, were given to Nintendo, and Rare got the rights to the Banjo-Kazooie characters, which at the time were owned by Nintendo. So, but Rare at one point did own their own Kongs, and this put the idea in my head and Chad's head when we were sitting down to devise what DK Mine would be and how we would explain our madness to the world, that one day, assuming Rare stayed with Nintendo, which at the time we thought they would always be together, one day Rare could make a game starring an original Kong. We called him Pepito Kong as just the most outlandish out there name, which isn't that far off. I mean, we were picturing a Kong with a sombrero, but considering we almost got Redneck Kong, I don't think Pepito Kong is too out of the ordinary. So our idea was, what if, Jeff.
Sorry for them noises that keep coming out of my body, but I'll try to keep them under control.
Just the mucus is building up. Pepito Kong just strikes. Yeah,
once we get past this, I think I'll be better.
So the idea was that Rare would make a game starring Pepito Kong. And if this game starring Pepito Kong had no other returning Donkey Kong universe characters in it, well, we would have to view this as a Donkey Kong universe game. Because how could we not? This rule doesn't really apply in today's day and age. Because Rare is no longer making Donkey Kong games, and there isn't that sole authorship. That's a word, is it? We'll say it's a word. There isn't that sole word of God anymore. Because now Retro is making Donkey Kong games, or we're making Donkey Kong games, and then we had Payon and Nintendo EAD and what have you. So everybody's got a finger in Donkey Kong's pie, but once upon a time it was just Rare, and I would argue that while the Pepito Kong rule is rightfully retired, that notion has kind of evolved over the years, especially in light of the Rare Renaissance, and it's kind of reaffirmed who we are as DK Vine and what DK Vine means. And you know what? First and foremost, we are a Rare fan site. This is Rare shared universe we're going on and on about. Others can play in the universe. Again, the aforementioned Payon or Retro or Nintendo themselves, who owns the bloody rights to half this shit. But there is this quality to DK Vine that it's fundamentally Rare, and that's what I mean when I say the Rare factor, and why it gets kind of top billing over other things. And that's so Rare being a former Rare developer, a Rare staffer, a Rare employee working on a new company, especially if it's a company they founded, grants them a certain amount of editorial capabilities.
And it's like I said before, I think it sort of lends a certain implication to the developer's intention. It allows us to interpret the in-game evidence such that, if they put a character in there that's a bear in blue shorts, and it's a game made by Rare staffers, it's clear to us that the intention is that it's... Did I say blue shorts? I meant yellow shorts. The intention is that it's Banjo. And we can make that jump because it's a Rare staffer. Whereas if another person makes a game and they're not connected to Rare at all, and they put that same reference in there, we're going to be a little more skeptical and apprehensive about making the declaration that Banjo the bear is in that game.
Right. Look, anybody can stick their dick in the wind these days and make a video game and release it on some sort. There's all sorts of unlicensed Donkey Kong games that get taken down from the App Store all the time. Those aren't DKU because they're just fan games. There's
a certain element of legitimacy that they're lacking, and it can't necessarily be quantified per se, but it's there. It's clear.
Now, I'm glad you brought up the idea of Banjo, because that comes into play in the argument of Tracky Train. So,
Tracky Train?
In Tracky Train, there are all sorts of passengers you pick up with your train. And among these passengers, there are lots of... By the way, the art style, these kind of resemble the Minecraft figures. Not figures, but characters. The models in Minecraft. Just a bit. They kind of have the square heads and they're very blocky and spritey based. But among the passengers that you can pick up, there is he looks exactly like Banjo. And I believe in the game he's labeled as Bear, right? Yeah. So there's that. Now that would give us one element of debate unto itself, because these are three former Rare staffers with their own company, and they stuck a dead ringer for Banjo with the name Bear, and we view Bear as Banjo's surname. So arguably, you could just be saying that would be like putting you in a game, Jeff, and just labeling an Onan. It would still be applicable. There's also something else in this game. Would you care to tell the audience what that something else is?
So yes, there is another character in this game that is very relevant to our discussion, and that is Yooka from off of Yooka-Laylee, the game that is Yooka-Laylee.
Yes, and here's the catch. Here's the big shocker, ladies and gentlemen. Yooka is actually labeled as Yooka in Tracky Train.
Yes, it's an actual sponsored or whatever the word you might want to use, an approved, legitimate cross-promotional cameo appearance by Yooka from off of Yooka-Laylee in the game Tracky Train.
So what these knuckleheads at Crash Lab did, and what Steve Ellis, Martin Wakely, and Lee Musgrave did, is they called up Chris Sutherland and Gavin Price and what have you, and they're like, "Hey boys, we have this game coming out for the mobile devices and what have you. You guys have your game coming out. Getting a lot of press for that. Had the biggest UK Kickstarter of all time. That's swell and all. Can we put a character from Yooka-Laylee in our game as one of the passengers you can pick up on the train of trackiness?" And Platonic was like, "Sure." And it happened. So
now here's where things get tricky, and not just tracky, but tricky. Yooka, technically speaking, appeared in the game Tracky Train before he appeared in the game Yooka-Laylee.
Wait a minute, Jeff. When did Tracky Train come out?
It came out approximately before Yooka-Laylee came out. I don't know the days. I don't have the calendar. But
did it come out before the Yooka-Laylee toy box?
I think so. I don't know if it matters. I very much don't know how to treat the toy box here. I don't know if it matters, but I think it came out before the toy box, unless it didn't.
I okay. As far as the toy box goes, and we're gonna get really off track here. Because we already made that joke like 7 times. The toy box the toy box is DKU, but I view the toy box as a demo. And what demos can be inconsequential, or they can be their own unique elements in canon. But you always view the actual release date as the official launch of the game. The whatever demos exist prior to that should just be viewed as being kind of tethered to the main game. That would be
they're not an official release. I would consider any demo a non-official release. It's officially released, but it's not the real product. The product is the game.
So anyway, even though Royston isn't in the Yooka-Laylee toy box, because the Yooka-Laylee toy box is a demo of Yooka-Laylee, the Yooka-Laylee toy box is still DKU, but you just have to kind of consider it to be just kind of adjacent, connected underneath.
Yeah, the Yooka-Laylee toy box is not a game. It is a part of Yooka-Laylee.
Yeah. So I'm looking up on the forum, and I'm trying to figure out when Tracky Train came out. Because if it came out after the toy box, we actually have.
I guess you have a sort of a get out of jail free card there if it came out after the toy box, but that kind of defeats the purpose of the whole argument, really. If you have you get out of jail free card.
Okay. So I'm looking up. I'm seeing references on the forum that predate the toy box. So
I believe that was the case. Yeah.
So
just for the listener, here's the situation. Tracky Train is a game that possibly features Banjo in it. But what we have not yet described is that it also features other passengers, many passengers that are sly references to video game characters. Banjo is one of them. The character named Bear that appears to look like Banjo is one of those passengers. However, there's a lot of characters in there. There's a character named Plumber that is Mario. And there's a character named Doctor, which looks like Eggman from Sonic the Hedgehog. So that is relevant. In addition to that, the character Yuka from Yooka-Laylee explicitly appears in this game before he appears in the game Yooka-Laylee.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, 1, is Tracky Train DKU? If it is not, which is to say if that bear is not Banjo, then does Yuka's appearance in Tracky Train make Yuka a non-DKU character? Now, 2, if that bear is Banjo, is Tracky Train a DKU spinoff because it's a brand new franchise or a brand new an original series, the first entry in a series? Is it a DKU spinoff? And that would make the appearance of Yuka not a problem because Yuka debuts in Tracky Train, which is a spinoff, and then Yuka appears in Yooka-Laylee and makes Yooka-Laylee a spin-off of Tracky Train, which is a spin-off of Banjo-Kazooie, and then we don't even have to worry about whether or not Royston is in Yooka-Laylee. It's just the whole thing.
Even though Royston is in Yooka-Laylee, we've already settled.
Oh yeah, that's settled. Come on now. The third option.
Continue.
And the third and final option is that Tracky Train is a cameo game because of all of these other legal skirting appearances or would-be appearances by other video game characters. It is a massive crossover by the nature of the fact that it has Mario in it and Dr. Eggman and Banjo and all these other characters.
Yeah, okay, so this is
it's very loaded. There's a lot going on here.
There's never been a game like Tracky Train as far as so many mental hoops you have to jump through to get to what this could be. And quite honestly, I don't know, like, I don't know if the DKU rules were ever equipped to deal with a Tracky Train. This is bonkers. All right, so for the record, just to clear the air here, I've looked it up. The first release date for Tracky Train was June 29th, 2016. The Yooka-Laylee toy box came out July 28th, 2016. So Tracky Train predates the toy box by 1 month. Okay.
And yeah, so there's that out of the way.
So, where do we even begin with this? I mean,
well, first, I think we need to ask ourselves right off the bat, and going into this, you have to accept that at the moment that Tracky Train is released, Yuka is not a DKU character.
That's correct.
Is that fair? Okay. So accepting that, the question is Tracky Train DKU or not? And that is very simply boils down to, is that bear Banjo or not?
Yes.
And
so
I think we can come to a pretty obvious conclusion on that one.
Can we?
Well, I don't know. Let me hear what you think about it.
I don't know which way you're going to go with this, Jeff, and I'm a little leery. So I've got some really convoluted theories on Tracky Train, and I have thought a lot about this over the last 6 months. We brought up Tracky Train on our season 4 finale of the Kongversation, and since then I was like, we're gonna have to address Tracky Train in 2017. This is going to have to be on our bucket list. On my wall of stuff to do here in the DK Vine offices, I have a post-it note that says, figure out the DKU justification and legal status of Tracky Train. This is on my to-do list, so I will be able to take a post-it note down from the wall once we're done here. Okay, so yes, Yuka, his first appearance chronologically is in Tracky Train, just like Banjo and Conker's first appearance chronologically was Diddy Kong Racing. The whole justification for the Donkey Kong universe right there. So already we've somehow DKUized the character of Yuka, which doesn't matter for Yooka-Laylee itself. Let me be clear, because Laylee, every other character in the game but Shovel Knight and Yuka would be DKU. That's not an issue.
And we're presuming that in any future sequel that Yuka might show up in, Laylee would also show up.
I very much doubt it would be an issue, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm on the same page.
Now I read some of your forum theories about this, Jeff, and I might go in a different direction than you. So I just want to be clear. I have great respect for you, and I'm sorry if this ends our working relationship. Now,
well, that's ominous.
Yeah. No. So, again, I'm going back to this notion of the rare factor and author intent. So, Crash Lab, the developer, has no authorization to claim some of these characters. I don't even know how they got away with like the characters who look like Mario and Eggman, and like that's, you don't want to be poking the eye of Nintendo, especially with Mario. Like, my God, they have no claim to that. Banjo is a different story. I would say though that Banjo it's an iffy situation, and it's a situation that is paradoxically made even more complex by the nature of Yuka. So, if this was just a game that did not have Yuka in it, but had this bear character, even with the rare pedigree, I would argue this may not be DKU. Because
I'm actually very surprised to hear you say that.
Okay, but I'm not done.
I'm listening. I'm just okay. So just surprised. I'm just surprised is all.
This Tracky zigs and zags, Jeff. So just stay seated, buckle up. The cart will be there to serve you soon. So Mario, or not Mario, I don't even know what do they call Mario in the game, because you played this.
Plumber.
They call him Plumber. Okay, well that's still that's still applicable. You got Plumber. What do they call Eggman?
Doctor.
Okay, they're being accurate. So Mario, Eggman, whatever.
It sounds like the setup of a joke. A plumber, a doctor, and a bear go into a bar.
Right.
Then they're on this this train for some reason.
Actually, you know what? Mario would be all three.
Whoa! Wait, he's a bear?
Yeah. In some circles, they would consider him a bear.
Oh. Hey, all right.
Yeah, I would say because Crash Lab kind of sowed its wild oats a little bit too much. Were it just a bear in the game that looked like Banjo, I would say absolutely that can be Banjo. But they kind of muddied their own waters here a bit by having a plumber that looks like Mario, a doctor who looks like Eggman. Are there any other video game?
I think that there's a whole bunch of them. But those are just the ones that I've seen that I remember just as examples.
We'll just say, I mean, this is made up, but we'll just say a character named Hedgehog, a character named Robot Boy, Robot Boy X, et cetera.
The dog who hunts the ducks.
Yes,
etc.
That would almost disqualify bear.
I'm interested. I find that interesting. And let me say, so I would have thought that your reasoning would be because of the rare pedigree, it's obviously Banjo.
No,
but that same logic does not apply to the other characters that they don't have pedigree over. That's what I would have thought you would have said about the situation.
See, if this was like a Male's brother or, again, Ed Bryan, maybe I would feel differently. But I don't know. Like, these are a bunch of like free radical guys who worked on like Jet Force and Blast Corps, and that's not discrediting them. The rare factor is definitely still there, but there isn't that direct lineage with Banjo so much. But the rare factor still applies. It's just they again added too many other video game characters that in no way could you. A Mario fan couldn't sit back and say Tracky Train. Absolutely, that's got to be Mario. Actually, let me look up Super Mario Wiki, see what they have to say about Tracky Train. I have a feeling it's not even going to be on there, but they have Milli Vanilli.
I would guess it's not. Yeah. Yeah. So this is interesting, and this brings up an interesting sub discussion. Is at one point we are going to have to talk about something that the forum and I've personally have been a champion of is referred to as the Tracky Train rule.
Okay.
And I want to mention that the Tracky Train rule is relevant to our interests, no matter what we decide is the specific case for Tracky Train itself. Because the situation described in the Tracky Train rule is going to happen to the DKU at some point. But should we go into that, or do you want to focus? I mean, I almost feel like I'm dividing our focus at this point by bringing that up.
Well, because there's so many angles to approach this damn train
the
from.
Stupid train track. Yeah.
This station has just so many. What do you want to call them? Tracks. Yeah.
I don't know anything about train stations, but tracks for which there are many. Yeah.
I really wish I was a nerd who was into model railroading just this once.
I think that the general forum consensus, if there was any consensus, I don't really remember, and I almost feel like my mind might have blocked it out, was that Tracky Train was DKU and a cameo game.
Okay.
And the logic being that it was DKU by the appearance of Banjo, and it was a cameo game by the nature of being a massive crossover. Now,
but is it a massive crossover?
That is absolutely relevant. There definitely were people who suggested not only is it not Banjo, or maybe it is Banjo because of the rare pedigree, but it is not a massive crossover because they don't have the pedigree to make the claim that Mario is in it, Eggman is in it, right. Etc.
So I'm looking at this as a fan of, Sonic or Mario. I'm putting my my feet in another person's shoes at the moment. And if I were a fan of one of those, a hardcore fan like Hyle Russell is the Donkey Kong Universe fan, I would say absolutely not. Get the fuck out of here, Tracky Train. I hope you derail like Amtrak.
On the other hand,
okay.
We mentioned at the very start of the episode, at the top, that legal restrictions and barriers, such as Ed Bryan not owning the character of Royston, do not matter to the DKU.
Okay. I agree, and I know where you're going, and I'm gonna get there. So let me say my piece before you spring any Tracky Train rule on me.
Right. We'll save that for a minute.
I have my own justifications for this, and we can even mend it with any rules and any additional clauses we may want to come up with. But I have some convoluted logic here, and it's not me wanting to make Tracky Train DKU. I don't really have a train in this station whatsoever. Again, I really wish I knew more about trains. I'm sorry. I really don't care one way or another. This isn't like I didn't care about making Goldilocks and Little Bear DKU. It just was. Like I wish Saberwolf GBA was DKU, but it's not. I don't choose which games I want to be DKU. I just follow the wind, basically. I mean, that's kind of what's so fun about this. We can only steer it so much as our knowledge allows us, but everything else, it's up to the fates. So I don't really care about Tracky Train, just how it relates to my obsession and the shared universe that I love. So yeah, I would say that from a legal perspective, we cannot say this is Mario, Eggman, or Banjo. However, Jeff, there are two factors here that work in our favor that would not work in a Mario fan's favor or any Sonic fan's favor. factor one is the aforementioned rare pedigree or the rare factor. That is something we have to at least consider. Even that might not be strong enough to hold up Bear as being Banjo, but it's at least a support column in its favor. The column might collapse, but at least there is a column there. The other factor, though, is Yuka's inclusion himself. Even if we are to consider that Yuka himself is not a DKU character at this point in time, at the time Tracky Train was released, June 29th, 2016, this is very much the character of Yuka, officially signed, sealed, delivered to Crash Lab from Playtonic. Here you go. This is Yuka. So, with that in mind, all of a sudden there is now there is now an official stamp here that was not stamped before. Out of all the characters in Tracky Train, we know this is actually the character of Yuka from off of Yooka-Laylee, from off of Playtonic Games. Because of that, we could then make the argument in Banjo's case, because Banjo-Kazooie has a connection to Yooka-Laylee through the Donkey Kong universe, that is enough evidence to tip the scales and say, yes, this would have to be Banjo in this case. There could be no other one it could be. This isn't just a bear that remarkably looks exactly like Banjo. This would have to be Banjo. From an in-universe fan perspective, then yeah, we could say, sure, that's Mario, sure, that's Eggman. Legally, we can't make that distinction, but good thing for us is that's not our legal battle to make.
Right. And Mario obviously has strong ties to the DKU with, several dozen DKU games. And Eggman appears in Sonic Racing, which features Banjo-Kazooie.
So I'm not saying, like, from our in-universe perspective, from the story mechanic perspective, that isn't Mario or Eggman, because of course it is. But from a legal perspective, we can't say it is. But now we have a slight loophole, just narrow enough we could squeeze through, that says, okay, that's Banjo, but only because Yuka's in it. Even though Yuka is from a game that's not even out yet at the time of Tracky Train's release, that is just enough to push it barely over the finish line and say, yeah, that's DKU. Now we can get into the arguments of what does this mean for the DKU? What does this mean for Yuka? Where do we classify this? Is this cameo or is this fish and chaps? But I would argue Tracky Train is DKU because of that, and it's extremely convoluted, and there's a lot of mental gymnastics.
It's almost like a Cartesian circle. It's like it's DKU because of Yooka-Laylee, which isn't out yet, and Yooka-Laylee's DKU, so it feeds back into the loop.
And I would argue that's actually Banjo. So at the very least, there is this DKU connection that predates Yooka-Laylee in Tracky Train. I know you're going to drop some sort of Tracky Train law on me here, but I just wanted to get that out in the open, that even though we're going to hear this law and we're going to discuss this and debate it, we may not need the law for Tracky Train to be
for
DKU.
Tracky Train's specific example. And actually, the law doesn't say anything about whether Tracky Train itself is DKU. That's really not the intention of it.
It's just named after it.
It's named after it. It's about the status of Yuka, the character. It's not about the status of Tracky Train, the game. It's about how Tracky Train, the game, affects the character of Yuka in his trajectory in the DKU. Do you want to get into that now, or?
Yeah. I just want to say, from my where I sit right now, before you get into any additional logic or legalese, I would argue that Tracky Train, because of the legal standings it's on, it cannot be viewed as a legitimate multi-character crossover like #IDRB or Smash Brothers, because we can't actually say it's Mario. It's kind of like a make-believe version of Mario and Eggman and what have you. We can view that from the perspective of the story mechanics of the Donkey Kong universe, but we can't actually sit back and say, yes, that is Mario. It's an espresso in Banjo pilot situation. So I would argue Tracky Train is actually Fish and Chaps. But I want to hear what you have to say. So I've said my piece. I will disembark on this train and some other train analogy and let you do your train track thing now. Okay.
So I think that there were some people who came to the consensus it must be cameo. Whether or not all the characters in there were legally or legitimate appearances of the many characters that they purported to represent. And I'm trying to get a list here of characters that are in it, and I'm struggling to come up with it. Tracky Train is like clear as hell. And it's just funny that we're having such an in-depth discussion about this. I mean, basically what amounts to a pretty silly little mobile game of very little consequence. But
welcome to the Kongversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't get a list of characters. It doesn't really matter. Whether or not Tracky Train is a spin-off or a cameo game matters for this specific instance, but it doesn't matter for the overall what it represents in the what types of fears it presented to us at the time it released. So the idea being, so Tracky Train came out months before Yooka-Laylee, and it features Yooka in it. And not that long after, there was the Worms franchise game by published by Team 17, who also published Yooka-Laylee, which features a lot of rare cameos. It features a physical appearance of Joanna Dark, and then it features many other rare characters and Platonic characters and other franchise characters as masks that the Worms wear. So it was
Right.
so it's not DKU. It does not feature any physical appearance of any Platonic characters either. But both of these promotional appearances of Yooka-Laylee characters before the release of Yooka-Laylee happened in quick succession. And it presented this fear to us on the forum that what if like all the main cast of Yooka-Laylee appeared in a non-DKU game before Yooka-Laylee came out? And what if they were just not DKU characters because of that? And it presented this fear, and it's something that I think is a very legitimate concern for any future DKU spin-off franchise going forward, that the actual game itself is going to come out at a later date, and before that happens, they put out all these little promotional cameo appearances. And they don't see that as ruining the sort of chronological lineage of the characters that they are creating. But in a strict legal DKU perspective, it does.
Diddy Kong Racing. I mean, look at Diddy Kong Racing.
Yeah, and then that's gonna play into this heavily. And I think that nobody at Platonic would look at Yooka, the character, and say that it is Yooka from off of Tracky Train.
Yes, but that would be funny if they did.
It would be funny, yeah. But I think that the intuition and obviously not even just the intuition, but the obvious conclusion is that Yooka is a character from off of Yooka-Laylee. Whereas I think you could argue Banjo is from off of Diddy Kong Racing.
Oh, I mean that's what we classify Banjo as. Banjo from off of Diddy Kong Racing.
Right.
When he won the Hall of Fame, that's how he was presented.
So the logic behind the Tracky Train rule, which we're about to describe, the Tracky Train rule is a little addendum to the rules that some members of the forum, including myself, tried to come up with. We had the blessing from Chad and Matt, who are staffers, or who were staffers at the time, were involved in crafting this rule. Myself was involved. Master DS got the ball rolling on it. I think Saf was in that discussion. Maybe I am Gibbon, Mitch Wolf, many forum members. Not everybody obviously was involved, but and it was sort of to address this concern that what if a very obviously DKU character, or a character that ought to be DKU, has this little meaningless promotional appearance before their game comes out, such as Yooka appearing in Tracky Train. Would it be fair that Yooka appears in a game like Tracky Train Tracky Train was not DKU at all. It had no banjo or no bear at all. And then Yooka and say Yooka-Laylee would not be DKU because of that. Just if it turned out to be that way.
Right.
And so somewhat of a rule was crafted to try and address that. And I don't have the rule in front of me. And very recently, there was a huge backlash against the foundation of the rule on the forum, saying that it was bullshit by some members. There's always something going on. I don't know. I can't defend this shit all the time. It's exhausting. But
so much drama from our... I mean, this is... Dude, you realize, Jeff, for the last 2 hours, we've been speaking gibberish. We are essentially... This is the equivalent of speaking
all of
in
this
tongues.
is made up. All of this is stuff that did not exist before DK Vine made it exist.
The world is dying. I mean...
the bees are dying at an alarming rate.
Dying. The polar ice caps are melting, and we're sitting here trying to suss out what Tracky Train means for this made-up shared universe that dates back to 1994. We're wasting our lives. But you know what? This is the life I've chosen. So
the gist of the Tracky Train rule that we sort of came up with was that a promotional appearance of a character in a game that is not their sort of quote-unquote intended debut or their conceptual debut where they were conceived to initially appear, the game they were conceived for, many different ways to describe the concept. But a promotional appearance that predates that debut cannot hurt that character's DKU status. Which is to say, so let's look at Diddy Kong Racing.
Okay.
Some people have said, if you want to mess with promotional appearances, then you're gonna be going against Diddy Kong Racing. But this is not the case with the Tracky Train rule, because Banjo and Conker would have debuted in Diddy Kong Racing. Let's say Diddy Kong wasn't in it, and they inserted Diddy Kong in it as a promotional appearance. Suddenly, Banjo and Conker have had their debut in a DKU game. And because of that, their games, their native games, Banjo-Kazooie and Conker's Bad Fur Day, are DKU spinoffs. The Tracky Train rule says that a promotional appearance such as that one can only help a character to become DKU, like Banjo and Conker in that example. It cannot hurt a character like Yooka. The logic behind it is that promotional appearances such as that are actually vital to the DKU, because without them, Diddy Kong Racing wouldn't exist. So it says that the DKU is in favor of those promotional appearances. But it essentially says, we had this addendum added to the rules that is called the Waluigi rule. And I think we need to describe that real quick. The Waluigi rule... Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm kind of all over the place here.
No, that's fine. The Waluigi rule, basically, this is something we never really had to address up to a certain point in the Donkey Kong universe, was what happens when a character is introduced in cameo games and then they go on to appear in a game that does not have a pre-existing Donkey Kong universe character. In this case, the very first character to fall under that definition was Waluigi, who made his debut in Mario Tennis on the N64 in the year 2000. And then I believe the first game he appeared in without Donkey Kong in it was Mario Dance Dance Revolution.
Yeah, Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix.
Excuse me.
In case the listener wanted to Google it, they want to type in the exact thing or else they won't find it.
Yeah, because everybody uses Google with quotation marks. Very precise.
Make sure you put the colon after revolution, or else if you don't have the colon, it won't work.
I apologize to the DDR MM fans out there. But yeah, Waluigi, and then I believe Toadette appeared in Double Dash, her debut, and then she went on to appear in the one Paper Mario game, and then
obviously you have some characters whose Western debut is in Super Smash Bros. Melee, and then
Roy.
they turn around to appear in their own franchise, which would have been somehow a spin-off of Melee by our logic, which we don't want.
Fire Emblem GBA would have been DKU had there been no Waluigi rule. Basically, it's saying that cameo games, because they are not native-born Donkey Kong Universe franchises, they're just franchises that Donkey Kong or friends are just stopping by for a brief spell. Any character that makes their debut in there is not DKU, and we do not have to follow them. And that also gets into the whole idea of the rare factor, too. And would covering Fire Emblem GBA really have any bearing on Rare Shared Universe? Absolutely not. The Waluigi rule just made it explicit what should have been transparent from the get-go, but it's not something we ever really had to address. And we even entertained the notion, like, what happens if, say, Charlie from Mario Golf gets his own game? Like, I think we were like tantalized by the possibilities, but when actually confronted with it, we realized no. Anyway, so that's
so as it relates to the Tracky Train rule, quote unquote rule, the Tracky Train rule sort of takes this idea of the Waluigi rule. The Waluigi rule says there's certain examples of DKU character appearances that I don't know where I'm going with this. Certain appearances of characters in games will not make a game DKU because they're not relevant to us. The Tracky Train rule says, hold on a second. Some of those examples of Waluigi rule kind of hurt us a little bit. An example would be, so the character Fox McCloud appears in the game Star Fox Adventures as a sort of what you might argue is a promotional appearance in an otherwise not a Star Fox game. You could claim. You could claim. We're in very shaky territory here.
You're losing a good portion of the audience.
Oh yeah, they already tuned out if they don't agree. It's
Fox McCloud. What, a promotional appearance in what, Star Fox Adventure? What the fuck are you talking about?
Star Fox Adventures was a not Star Fox game called Dinosaur Planet, and they inserted him into that as a promotional appearance in the same way that Diddy Kong was inserted into Diddy Kong Racing.
Okay, I mean that's one way of looking at it, sure.
And the characters in that game, Star Fox Adventures, who without Fox McCloud's appearance, those characters would have been pure, honest to God DKU spin-off characters, because we consider Dinosaur Planet a DKU spin-off because of its appearance by Tricky the Triceratops. But because Fox McCloud appears in that game, all those original characters, like Crystal, would technically, by the rules, be considered Waluigi ruled. Because this is a Star Fox game that happens to feature Tricky, a DKU character, which, in a very strict reading of the rules, would make it a cameo game. And in a strict reading of the rules, characters that debut in cameo games are Waluigi ruled. They are not DKU characters. But we want to cover Crystal, and we want to cover the characters of Dinosaur Planet as if they were DKU spin-off characters. Now look at Tracky Train. Sort of a different example.
I just need to touch upon the notion, too, that Star Fox Adventure / Dinosaur Planet is another very weird situation. Much like Tracky Train, it's a very weird situation.
It's very loaded, very strange. We don't consider
that was a Diddy Kong Racing spin-off, Diddy Kong Racing prequel at one point that got married to the Star Fox brand. But because of that, we still consider it a spin-off. That's a whole nother can of worms. Tying it back. Anyway, sorry.
So the logic behind the Tracky Train rule is, so Yooka is a character that would have debuted in an honest-to-God DKU spinoff, Yooka-Laylee, but happened to have this promotional appearance that sort of muddied that, and that would be his appearance in Tracky Train. And we think it's unfair that his appearance in Tracky Train should preclude him from being DKU when his real debut ought to be Yooka-Laylee. What we would consider Yooka, the character, to be Yooka from off of Yooka-Laylee. And so the sort of kind of the logic we decided upon was that a promotional insertion of a character into a game that predates their debut, but is not what we intuitively would consider their debut, it can't hurt that character's DKU status. It sort of gives them a cloak from the Waluigi role. Yooka, although debuting technically in Tracky Train, is really from Yooka-Laylee, and that promotional appearance does not make Yooka-Laylee exempt from DKU status by way of the Waluigi role. Most everyone kind of agreed that ought to be the way Yooka, the character, should be treated, but with a strict reading of the rules, Yooka would not be DKU. And so some sort of addendum to change it would be necessary if that is a result we wanted. And I kind of ran with it thinking that we could sort of retroactively tie the same logic into Crystal from Dinosaur Planet and say that the promotional insertion of Fox McCloud into the Dinosaur Planet brand didn't preclude the Dinosaur Planet characters from being considered full DKU characters. This is a discussion that you were not involved with on the forum, and so I'm really interested to hear now, for the first time, really, what are your thoughts on that?
I was off getting married this summer. This
Lame.
discussion happened.
Come on.
I know. Clearly, I missed out.
Tracky Train was happening.
I would argue you bring up Star Fox Adventures as a comparison point, but if the situations were actually comparable, then Yooka-Laylee would have become like.
Well, it's not a one-to-one. It is not a one-to-one exact comparison. It's.
I know, because it would be like if Yooka-Laylee became Yooka-Trainee and they put like they added Tracky Train elements into Yooka-Laylee itself.
I think the wording on the rule was something along the lines of, if a character that would have been a DKU character by way of a DKU spinoff, had it not been for a promotional appearance that would preempt or co-opt their debut. Now that is the key to the rule, is the word preempt or co-opt. Now, Yuka's appearance in Tracky Train preempts, whereas Crystal's appearance in Star Fox Adventures co-ops. It replaces what would have been her debut in Dinosaur Planet. So replacing her debut or preempting her debut. Either way, the fact that it came by way of a promotional appearance doesn't necessarily hurt her DKU status or Yuka's DKU status. What do you think of that?
I understand the argument, and intellectually, I'm on the fence. I want to say yes because I feel like it is a good rule, and it's a rule that can only help us going forward, because you're right, we're going to run into this again. It's one I'm going to have to ruminate on really a little bit more, because, I mean, and look, this is not a new situation for me. The Waluigi rule, it took me a long time to get on board with the Waluigi rule, where it just, everything all of a sudden just clicked crystal clear, and I was like, yes, the Waluigi rule. But look back on the forum history. For the longest time, I was hedging my bets against the Waluigi rule. So I'm more on board with your Tracky Train rule, your Tracky Train amendment, than I was with the Waluigi rule initially. So you have that going for you. I'll say that much. I have a question, though. So assuming that this Tracky Train amendment passes, and this is how we view things going forward, And let's assume that there was no bear in Tracky Train. There's nothing else to prop up Tracky Train as a DKU game. Not Yooka-Laylee or Yooka the character as DKU, but Tracky Train itself. If Yooka was it, would Tracky Train then be DKU?
So I think that my thinking on it is this, is that the rule of what determines whether or not a game is DKU is whether or not it has a DKU character in it first. Okay? So set that aside. The rule that determines whether or not a character itself is DKU, we have all these rules. The Tracky Train rule was designed such that it would protect the character of Yooka and make sure he is DKU. And so by that logic, Yooka is a DKU character because his real official, whatever you want to call it, the debut that we think counts more is his debut in Yooka-Laylee, not his little sort of promotional appearance in Tracky Train. So the fact that he debuts officially in Yooka-Laylee means Yooka is a DKU character. And a game is DKU if it has a DKU character in it. So, by that logic, Tracky Train is DKU because it has Yooka in it. Now, this is very sort of anti our kind of general thinking because it messes with chronology. And nothing in the rules messes with chronology like it does. But it says that Yooka is DKU because of Yooka-Laylee. And it is not precluded from that fact by Tracky Train. And then it says Tracky Train is DKU because it has a DKU character in it, which is Yooka.
Okay.
So what do you think of that?
My other, I guess, question then would be, would it matter then if, okay, let's say Tracky Train was announced as a game that was coming out before Yooka-Laylee. Does which game is announced first matter?
So this was a big point of debate, and I think that and Chad was big in this conversation too, and I think that we both agreed, Chad and I and some others, that it wasn't so much about laying down the specifics of how to describe exactly the situation it has to be. It was more about an intuition thing. It was so the question is, what makes an appearance that character's intended appearance? Does it matter which game was announced first? Does it matter which game was promoted first? Or those questions don't matter because it might be different in different situations. What it matters is a sort of intuitive, this character is from this game. Crystal is from Dinosaur Planet. Yooka is from Yooka-Laylee. And the specifics surrounding that might be different from a case-to-case basis. Putting that hard-coded into the rule of like a specifically what is a promotional appearance, what is the character's real conceptual debut, or the debut they were conceived for, or whatever you want to call it, or official debut. Putting it hard-coded into the rule, what that was something I wanted to avoid, or what we all wanted to avoid, because it sort of was something that you wanted to leave up to creative liberty. But I think that in any given situation where a problem might arise, it would be obvious what is the real appearance and what is the promotional appearance. Does that make sense?
It does. So here's what I'm going to say. I feel like, as I said earlier in this episode, when the rules were first written in 1999, we could have never foreseen apps on mobile devices. Like that itself, like, what the fuck are you talking about? On my phone, I can download all this whole library of games. In 1997, when Diddy Kong Racing came out, this wouldn't have been a discussion at all. And this whole notion of promotional appearances to promote an upcoming debut would be laughable. It was a big deal when Banjo and Conker first appeared in Diddy Kong Racing. But that was 1997. And things are a little bit more muddied in 2017. And so the rules do have to adapt to account for promotional appearances, especially when we get into these independent developers who want as much promotion as possible, or you've got all of these, say, ex-Rare staffers with their own indie companies all doing each other a solid and having fun with each other. That's something we couldn't have foreseen back in 1999. So in that light, I am definitely on board with this Tracky Train rule. I am on board with this train. I feel like it needs to enter a discretionary period, a trial period, if you will.
Right.
So it can be an amendment add to the rules, maybe in a different color ink than the other ones, just to try it on for size. Kind of a fluid state.
And two things real quick that I just ought to clarify about it is, one, that sort of one of my intentions in deriving it was that it shouldn't just come out of thin air. Because that kind of felt... I mean, obviously, I think the Waluigi rule...
Nothing comes out of thin air with the rules. Even the Waluigi rule had logic baked into it that were in the rules from the start, even if they were never actually addressed
and
explicitly anywhere.
So basically, the logic in arriving at the form that it is in now, which may not be the final form that the Tracky Train rule someday ends up. I don't know. It might need tweaking. And in the most recent debate about it that happened, I felt like it needed some tweaking based on some backlash that was against it. That there was legitimate points made against it. That it's maybe not perfect as it is. But the logic in arriving at what it is now was trying to derive it from precedent. And it couldn't come out of thin air. And so it came out of the fact that Star Fox Adventures exists, and we still treat the Diddy Kong race or the Dinosaur Planet characters as if they are DKU characters. When many people over the years have come to the rules, sort of started to understand the rules, and then said, well, wait a minute, Star Fox Adventures doesn't really make sense. And if you were to do a very strict reading of the rules, maybe Star Fox Adventures is a cameo game, Crystal is a cameo character or a Waluigi character, and Star Fox Command maybe shouldn't be DKU. But it is. And we have operated under that ruling for probably almost a decade now. When did Command come out? About a decade. And so I sort of thought the Tracky Train rule has to come out of that precedent, and that will lend legitimacy to the Tracky Train rule and also retroactively lend legitimacy to Dinosaur Planet or Star Fox Command.
Okay, I can get on board with that.
Based out of precedent, sort of.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing I just has to be said about it is some people have said, well, the rule fucks with Diddy Kong Racing, and it doesn't. The rule says, my biggest fear. The rule says if a character would be DKU, but they aren't because of a promotional appearance, then they still are DKU. And that's a simplified reading of the rule. That's just an if-then statement, very simplified.
So this train only goes one direction.
It's a one-direction train. This is if they would be, but they aren't, then they still are. Whereas Diddy Kong Racing is they would not have been, and then they became DKU, so they still are. You know what I mean? The if-then statement only works in one direction. And basically, an easier way to summarize it would be to say the Tracky Train rule says promotional appearance can only add to the DKU, but they cannot subtract from it. It says that promotional appearances, such as the promotional appearance that Diddy Kong made in Diddy Kong Racing, or that Banjo and Conker made in that same game, or the promotional appearance that Fox McCloud made in Dinosaur Planet, or the promotional appearance that Yooka made in Tracky Trains, none of those appearances can subtract a character from the DKU that would otherwise have been in the DKU. There's no subtraction. That's all it says. It kind of gives a little blanket cloak to protect us from the Waluigi rule in instances when a character like Yooka, who ought to be DKU, would otherwise not be, for a reason that we kind of deem, promotional and not fair. At least that's the logic behind it. Like you said, at this point, it's really sort of on a shaky ground. It's not really in the official canon, but it's something that is in the background of the community's mind right now.
Well, and like you said, going forward, we're going to be running into this situation more and more. It might be several years before we encounter another Yooka in Tracky Train
really,
situation.
Tracky Train wasn't the first example of this discussion. It was the game Lobo Destroyo, which is not maybe ever going to be released, but maybe it is.
Still being developed by the fine people at Left-Handed Games.
I mean, the game Lobo Destroyo, which is going to be released, which may have been DKU when it is released, maybe DKU, but...
Well, I can speak a little bit to Lobo Destroyo, given that I have done some writing for it. And I can't speak too much for it because I have signed an NDA, but I can bring up Lobo Destroyo as a hypothetical example, I guess. But I want to table that for a little bit down the road.
Yeah, all I was going to say was that the fact that the character of Mutt appears in Super Kart Jeep, some Super Indy Kart. Indy Kart. Mutt made an appearance in that game that predates what we would consider his real the debut that he was intended to have, which is in the game Lobo Destroyo. That is where the first example of the Tracky Train conundrum sort of came about. So, Agreed. Like I said, it's going to come again. It's definitely going to come up,
Right. This is the era we live in 2017. This is the new world. Now, so let's pull this train into the station and mercifully move on to the next game. But let's get a ruling here on a couple different things. The Tracky Train rule that is being put into a trial state.
Tracky trial train.
Track. We will put it.
For the record, I wanted the rule to be called the Tricky Train rule to reference both the train game and Tricky the Triceratops. But
that's too fucking much. Yeah,
I was overruled.
Keep it simple, stupid. Kiss. It's what Gene Simmons does, and he's rich. So, Tracky Train rule, we'll put it into a trial effect. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, it took me like a year or two to get on board with the Waluigi rule, and now I'm its biggest advocate. So just bear with me, but I'm willing to try this out. That being said, though, I don't know if the Tracky Train rule needs to apply to Tracky Train because of the reasons I gave much earlier in this episode at this point. I think because of the dual nature of both Yooka and Bear/Banjo and the rare pedigree, all of those things make Tracky Train a very unique, very controversial. I'll add that much. I'm aware of how controversial this is. But I'm willing to say all of those makes this DKU unto itself. Yooka helps, but Yooka does not make it DKU. Bear/Banjo makes it DKU. And because of the dubious legal nature of all of those characters, it's not necessarily a true multi-character, multi-franchise crossover in the spirit of #IDARB. So it's DKU. Are we both in agreement then? No matter what, it's DKU.
My opinion is that no matter what the standing of the other characters, it's definitely Banjo. So
Okay.
it is DKU. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So I am leaning towards Fish and Chaps, but I am willing to be swayed. What do you think?
Well, okay. So my opinion at this very moment is I'm swayed by the things you have said. I just vaguely am remembering that I had come to a different conclusion in the past, and I can't remember why. And I'm wondering if maybe there's a compelling reason why I had the conclusion that it must be a cameo game, but it's not coming to mind right now. So I'm tentatively on board with you.
Okay.
But I'm
tentatively
vaguely
on board with the Tracky Train rule. You can
Right.
be tentatively on board with it being Fish and Chaps.
Yeah.
and that's good. This is what America needs to be, Jeff.
Yeah, it's a give and take. You get a little
Give and
Tracky, I get a little Train. You know, we meet in the middle.
This is how laws are made. Compromise. Okay, so really, Congress needs to learn a lesson from us. I think this should be mandatory listening for all elected members in government right now. So we'll say tentatively it's Fish and Chaps. Tentatively, the Tracky Train rule is now into effect, but 100% Tracky Train is DKU. Oh my God, we
I think some of the upcoming ones we might be able to go through a little quicker than so far. I don't know.
Well, this one is going to be another controversial one. Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge. Amiibo! As the annoying in-store monitors that still exist for some reason spew out at you whenever you pass them.
Amiibo!
Yeah, God.
Okay.
So Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge. This was a free download released last year that was made by the Mario vs. Donkey Kong folk. This is actually a Mario vs. Donkey Kong game. Not in name, but in spirit. The title screen itself has the Mario vs. Donkey Kong theme, the mashup between the Mario and Donkey Kong theme. And of course, it stars not just the mini Marios, but mini everybody's in the main Mario cameo cast. And that includes a mini Donkey Kong and mini Diddy Kong. And these mini characters, you don't actually control them, but they walk, independently, and you have to create platforms so they can get to and fro and collect all the coins.
This sounds like a very logical continuation of the arcade era. What a great crossover between the Mario and Donkey Kong franchise.
I've played this one. Unlike Tracky Train, I have actually played this one, and I don't like to badmouth games really that much anymore, but this is a slog. Oh my God.
Well, there's only one person on DK Vine that will be upset by you saying that, so it's okay.
I know. I am sorry, Gibbon. I am sorry. I am Gibbon. You can defend us all you want at dkgirder.com, but this is not my bag. So anyway, the environments your mini characters go on, mini Donkey Kong and mini Diddy Kong are on Donkey Kong Island. You've got the retro jungle hut in the background, Donkey Kong's jungle hut. You've got lots of environments taken from the kind of Returns retro era. However, there's a hitch. No actual characters besides the mini toy versions appear in the game. Okay, so ordinarily we would just say, well, it's not DKU. They're just toy versions. That's it. And ordinarily that I would agree. There's an interesting wrinkle in this argument, though, Jeff.
Wait, whoa, okay. I didn't expect there to be an interesting wrinkle. I'm buckled up now.
Now, not an interesting Kong who has wrinkles, because that would be amazing. I
hear all the most interesting wrinkled ones are dead these days.
Yes. The mechanics of this game, like the logic of the game, suggest that the characters themselves are winding up and setting off their toy doppelgangers. After all, the toy doppelgangers are going through the individual characters' homelands. So Donkey and Diddy Kong are probably setting off their mini Donkey Kong and mini Diddy Kong, and winding up setting them off. Now, how do these toy characters get set off? Well, there's a reason this game is free, Jeff. Because this game was made to promote and sell amiibos. It's called Amiibo Challenge. The subtitle is.
Oh wait, so that's in the title, okay, of the game.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge. So
Amiibo.
To play any of these characters, you have to have their amiibo, and you scan them in. I had to buy one of the NFC scanners because I don't have a new 3DS. I never bought one. And so I had to buy the independent NFC scanner for $20. Bought it with the Patreon money. This is what Patreon money does. It allows me to talk about this bullshit. And I scanned in my Donkey Kong and my Diddy Kong and gave it a whirl. And like I said, shit. But that's besides the point. The DKU is not about games we necessarily enjoy. It's just about how the cookie crumbles, so to speak. So, in the logic of this game, you scan in the Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong amiibo, and then the mini Donkey Kong or mini Diddy Kong gets set off on Donkey Kong Island for their little, whatever, adventure, if you want to call it that. So, by the logic of the story, it's Donkey and Diddy setting them off. Now, they don't make a physical appearance in the game, but the amiibo you scan in is the amiibo of Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong. Now, what are amiibo? That varies from game to game. Sometimes amiibos are nothing. Sometimes they actually represent the real character. Although that hasn't really been the case as far as the Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong amiibos go, up until potentially this game. So let me bring up some historical precedent here to help illustrate why this is potentially Donkey Kong universe. Mario Party E. This was a deck of cards. It was a card game / video game released for the short-lived e-reader peripheral for the Game Boy Advance in the early to mid-aughts, the naughties, the very naughties, or the really naughties, or the mildly naughties. Mario Party E was a card game where you could scan in certain cards and play mini games on your Game Boy Advance. However, there was also a physical component to this card game that you played in front of you on your table. There was a mat you spread out. There were cards that you played, and you'd occasionally draw a card. It was a mini game card. You scanned it into the e-reader. You played it on your Game Boy Advance. Donkey Kong never made a video game appearance in Mario Party E, but he did appear on a physical card in the game itself, playing a role in the nature of Mario Party E, which did have a video game component. So even though Donkey Kong was not part of the video game, the structure of Mario Party E bridged the two realities of the virtual world and the physical world, because Donkey Kong appeared in the physical world and there was a video game component to it. We classify Mario Party E as Donkey Kong universe. So, Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge is potentially another Mario Party E situation, with the part of the physical Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong appearance being played by their amiibos themselves. Thoughts, Jeff?
Okay, so I think first we need to establish that the DKU, obviously, for a game to be DKU, it has to have the physical appearance in that setting, or just there's the physical appearance in the game of a DKU character. However, it has been established in other examples that sight, the visual sight of a character, is not the only way to establish that the character is physically present. Sometimes the implied physical presence is enough. An example, Connect Sports Rivals, with I think it was maybe DLC missions or some sort of missions that involved characters from various Rare franchises, implied the physical presence of Mumbo Jumbo, despite us not seeing him on the screen.
Right.
It was implied through the story and through the text and through the context of the situation that Mumbo was there in the game. That's just one example. So I think that the context of this game, the fact that some character unseen is winding up the toys, and that the toys physically would not move if there was not a character there to wind them. Like, they are inanimate objects. So the toys there has to be a character present, even though we don't see them.
Now, and ordinarily, I would say that would not be enough as far as what Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge presents to us for it to be DKU. But my argument is that the Amiibo factor is enough to push it over the line just barely.
Right. I think that just the vague notion that some character is there setting off the toys is not enough. But what points us to the fact that Donkey Kong is there is that you can scan your Donkey Kong Amiibo into the game. And I think that Amiibo do physically represent a character. And the reason I think
they can. They don't always have to, though.
No, they don't always, because not every game that has Amiibo functionality is a physical appearance of that character.
Right.
But I do think that that Amiibo can, in many contexts, imply a character's presence. And I'm kind of likening it back to the notion of the Smash Brothers trophy. I've always felt that the Amiibo, as a physical figurine, is sort of like a Smash Brothers trophy in that it comes to life in the game. And obviously Smash Brothers is a highly contentious topic. It's actually not on our docket today. I guess it'll be in the sequel.
Thank God. But yeah, we'll relitigate Smash Brothers in a future tribunal.
But the notion that the trophy can come to life and then turn back into a trophy, that's how I view the Amiibo. In the physical realm, it is just the figurine. But when you put it into the game, it is awakened, to its physical character presence, and then back to, a figurine again. I think that based on the context of the game, the sort of logic of there has to be a character physically present to wind up these toys, and then that combined with the action of winding up the toy being represented by the scanning of an Amiibo, there's a very clear implication that it is Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong doing the action in the physical realm of the game. That's my that's kind of where I'm coming at it from. And it's like you said, it's a Mario Party E situation.
It's kind of like Tracky Train. If it was just one element by itself, it wouldn't be enough. But when you add it, the greater sum equals something more is there. And in this case, I would say, yeah, because you have to scan in a Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong amiibo to set off those characters, or Mario or Peach or whatever. It has to be those characters setting them off. Therefore, the amiibo represents the physical manifestation of the character, much like the Donkey Kong card in Mario Party E represented a physical appearance by Donkey Kong, interacting, influencing the video game world ever so slightly. So, because of that, because of the historical lineage there, and because of everything you just said, I would argue, this is Donkey Kong Universe. Again.
And another way that you could look at it is that we interact with video games through a physical medium, whether that physical medium is a controller and buttons on a controller or joysticks on a controller. We use those physical items to interact with the fictional world of Donkey Kong. You know, move the joystick and you move Donkey Kong. I think that the amiibo itself, in this instance and in some instances, is just another extension of the controller in influencing that medium.
Right.
I think I think it's just it's a physical manifestation of Donkey Kong in the game, in the digital realm. Yeah.
Yes. I agree completely, and I'm actually surprised you're in agreement with me. So I thought this was going to be one where we'd be butting heads for 2 hours.
I'm usually more of a fucker.
All right. Well, hey, I didn't know I'd be getting on board with a Tracky Train rule either. So this night is full of surprises. All right. So our ruling on Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge, DKU.
Yeah, DKU cameo game.
Agreed. All right. All right. So here we go. We've got this is a game that's been out for a while now. Through DLC, it has become potentially Donkey Kong Universe. But here's the problem, Jeff. We're not going to be able to decide what this is tonight. We're basically putting this out there. We're asking our
I have a black and white opinion already.
Okay. Killer Instinct, the modern Killer Instinct, not the original
Killer Instinct 2013. 2013.
Right. Yeah. Not Killer Instinct 2, not Killer Instinct Gold. The new Killer Instinct, originally developed by Double Helix, now under the protection of Iron Galaxy. So there were these DLC bundles, and Cameron Regal on the DK Vine staff is really the guy to talk to about Killer Instinct 2013. He's kind of the in-house expert on it at this point. There was I believe it was Rash, who was a DLC character in Killer Instinct 2013.
Rash, one of the Battletoads.
Yes. And Cameron, I see you're in the chat, so help us out here. If I misspeak, please correct me. So Rash, you could have a backpack for Rash, and that backpack was the head of the Lord of Games log from off of Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. Right? Yeah. So,
it's the physical appearance of the head of log.
Right. Now, because the Lord of Games can manifest in many different forms, potentially even he appeared at some point in Grab by the Ghoulies as Fiddlesworth. Not saying that Fiddlesworth was always the Lord of Games, but at one point in Grab by the Ghoulies, Log was impersonating Fiddlesworth, at the very least. This could potentially very much be the Lord of Games hitching a ride on Rash, checking out the action in Killer Instinct. Now, there is a precedent that it does exist that this is very similar to, and Jeff, I'll allow you to explain.
So in the early days of Viva Pinata's release, there was a prolonged period where Viva Pinata was not considered to be DKU before eventually we had a little bit of closure that said that the Pinata goldfish in the shop was in fact Royston by way of Leigh Loveday's Word of God. But before that happened, there was a statue or an appearance of Mr. Ribs in Viva Pinata. Mr. Ribs is a character from Grab by the Ghoulies. And although Mr. Ribs appeared to be in the game, he was a static just a static statue. There was no animation. There was no, audio file or basically no physical action whatsoever. And I think it might have been a Scribes that even suggested that it wasn't the real Mr. Ribs. I don't remember. But
it was Scribes.
Yeah, so the DKU stance was that that's not really Mr. Ribs, even though it looks like...
so disappointing. That was so disappointing, though, because it very much could have been Mr. Ribs, and Lee just poured water all over that. But what could we do? Again, it's not that what we want, it's what is laid out in front of us, and in that case, it couldn't be Mr. Ribs.
So the question is the backpack or accessory that looks like log, is it another example of a static facsimile of a rare character that is not a physical appearance of that real character, or by the fact that log himself is this sort of deity that can take different forms?
He's a trickster god.
Yeah, he's a trickster god. Does that mean that this could be the real log? That's the situation.
This is the situation, and this is a situation that we don't really have the authority to weigh on one side or the other. We have tried to get in touch with Iron Galaxy to weigh on this, to give us some word of God. They have not responded. So I ask you, the audience of the Kongversation, who are trying to get Fabio on the Kongversation, who are trying to hashtag bring back the spiders. I realize you guys are busy, but I do ask that you reach out to Iron Galaxy at Killer Instinct on Twitter and ask them, hey, is this actually the Lord of Games hitching a ride in Killer Instinct 2013?
So,
and
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. It would be nice if Killer Instinct was a cameo game, Killer Instinct 2013. Again, let's just clarify, this would not retroactively make the entire Killer Instinct franchise Donkey Kong Universe. This would just be a cameo appearance by a Donkey Kong Universe character in Killer Instinct. But, yeah, I mean, do you have any more thoughts on this?
I do. I have good inclination to suggest is not DKU. And I think that official word from Iron Galaxy could overrule anything I'm about to say. But
okay.
Typically, obviously a game is going to be not DKU until proven otherwise. In the general sense, a character's physical appearance has to be proven, not the reverse of that. You don't take something and have to prove, like, we don't have to prove that's not log. Somebody has to prove that is log. Okay. There have been many examples in the past where an appearance, and it's not just Mr. Ribs in Viva Pinata, but generally any time something like this happens, we ask, there has to be an animation. It can't just be static. If there's any sort of animation, if his eyes blinked, anything, then we would be able to take that in-game evidence of his blinking and have enough creative freedom to say, yeah, it's definitely logged. The same happened with the Game & Watch title screen, Game & Watch Gallery 4. It's animated, which implies a physical presence. It's not just a static image.
Yes.
The other thing that I think works against it, so it comes packaged with Rash, the Battletoad, and in addition to log, it's just one accessory out of sort of a trio of accessories that are all rare references. Rash is the only rare character from outside the Killer Instinct franchise that is in the game, and so he sort of acts as the liaison to all of Rare as a sort of Rare rep. So you have,
which is a shame because I think Mr. Pants would have been a better choice.
Well, I think yellow shirt guy, but it's neither here nor there. He has the accessory of a backpack that looks like log, yellow shorts as Banjo the Bear would wear, and a like a hat or a mask that looks like Conker from Conker's Bad Fur Day.
It's like a hoodie, but like a disconnected hood.
Right.
That in the shape of Conker. But this is all optional wear, by the way. This is
Right.
like you don't have to wear this as rash because that would be idiotic.
And so I think that the fact that it comes as an accessory among these other accessories, and the other accessories are all very clearly references to Rare without being physical character appearances. You have shorts, and you have a hoodie that looks like Conker, but is obviously not Conker's head. And then you have a backpack that looks like Log, but is obviously not Log because it's a backpack. It's a trio of inanimate accessories, and it has no animation. It's a static object. I think that those things all combined together give us enough in-game evidence to suggest there's no reason in-game to believe it is Log. Now, Word of God doesn't necessarily overrule the in-game evidence, but it can inform our interpretation of in-game evidence. And I think that Word of God from Iron Galaxy could suggest that, yeah, it's Log. But at this moment, there's just nothing there. We would be making a very huge leap that goes against precedent.
Oh, okay.
If we declared it as Log.
Ordinarily, I would agree, but being the nature of the Lord of Games as a trickster god who can take any form, even the form of a backpack if he so chose, that's enough to give me pause. And I know Cameron feels the same way. And I really do feel like we need Word of God on this just to settle the matter. This is going to be a cloud over our head. We can say, oh, no, it's probably not DKU, but you know very well you won't be able to sleep tonight. I won't be able to sleep tonight. We will not get a good night's sleep until Iron Galaxy says one way or another.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think with the current evidence, it is not DKU. We would need added evidence, as in a Word of God.
I'm not saying we can make a ruling that it's DKU, but I'm saying we can't make a ruling that it's not DKU. I'm saying this has to be, in this case, this has to be declared a mistrial. For now, we can always have another trial down the line in a new DKU tribunal. But for now, I think in the case of Killer Instinct 2013, we have to declare a mistrial. Jello! All right, Jeff. There are other games on our docket, but unfortunately, we're going to have to adjourn here pretty shortly. We're going to have to go into recess, and we will have to get to some of these other games on our docket. And these are not like pressing games. These are games that have been out for a while.
Yeah, I think that covering Yooka-Laylee was probably the big one this week, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, we'll save these games for a future tribunal, but we do have some calls to take, and I know some of our listeners wanted to bring up games to us. So why don't we take the calls we got, and we'll address them, and then we will bang the gavel one last time and go into recess and take off our robes. Because are you wearing anything under your robe right now? Because I am freeballing it, and I am sticking to my chair.
Yeah, I was wearing a second robe under my robe. I just kind of thought
don't do that. It's July. Why are you doing that to yourself?
Well, it just seemed like the right thing to do. I don't know.
I mean, I know black is slimming, but not in this heat. All right. Let's take the first call.
Hey, it's you-know-who, the match, as always. So, see, I just tried to send this call, and then my call dropped, so that was weird that you have two calls from me. But anyway, here's the point. This episode's about the DKU games that should be DKU, right? So, here's the thing. The Supreme Court does not exist anymore. The law doesn't matter anymore. So, Donald Trump could try to get a Trump ban passed. So, I could try to get these games to be DKU then, am I right? So, with that said, here's a few games I think should be DKU. Number one, Conker's Pocket Tales should be the reason why Mickey's Racing Adventure for Mickey Speedway USA for GBC is DKU. Because in that game, the rare cow appears. And I don't care about the stupid drone, Roy. See, I don't get why there is a drone, Roy. Don't give me your excuse, because it's stupid. It's stupid, it shouldn't exist. I mean, why not? Why not? You know it's a rare thing. You know it exists in DKU, so it should be a DKU game. Stupid! Stupid! Second of all, Kirby's Planet Roboboat, or whatever the game was called. And in this game, here's what happens. So Kirby's there, and he swallows stuff, okay? But you can put an amiibo, and if you put a Donkey Kong amiibo, it says, Kirby inhale Donkey Kong. Yeah, that should be DKU because it says he inhaled Donkey Kong. And it's physically Donkey Kong. Now, here's the thing though, the stupid thing Nintendo did. They made it so that like, if you would put Animal Crossing amiibo, it would say, Kirby swallowed Animal Crossing amiibo or something stupid. No, Animal Crossing is stupid, so don't even count that. It should just be DKU just because it says Kirby swallowed Donkey Kong. And it's also Vor. Third, Soma Spirits. Here's the thing about Soma Spirits. It's a game Andrew, Agent Ape, the guy who's modding the forum now. He's a loser or something. I don't care. I hate him! He made this game. Or, no, he didn't make the game. He did the music for it. And in the game, Royston's in it. And get this. There's also a Dark Royston. That's right. Like Dark Pit. Now, the goldfish taps 3 times. It should be DKU. Come on, man. Stupid. No one owns a goldfish, okay? Nobody owns a goldfish. How do you excuse Platonic for using the goldfish then, huh? Nobody owns goldfish. And you know what? Speaking of that, the call's going to drop, but now I'm going to send the second part of the call, okay?
Okay, Mamechi. That's part 1. Let's hear part 2. And Jeff, I hope you're taking notes.
Yeah, I realized halfway through I had to start writing this down.
I always just like zone out. I'm sorry. All right. Number 2. Here we go. You think you could say that again?
Okay, part 2 of the call. Here's the thing. There's a game called Rhythm Heaven Fever, okay? And in this game, there's a goldfish that taps 3 times, and you fish it. You're fishing. And here's my theory. I think this is Royston before Banjo-Kazooie happened. That's what Rhythm Heaven is a prequel to Banjo-Kazooie. Before Royston is captured. This is when he was in the sea, and he still has a tendency to poke things 3 times. So, as you may or may not notice, this should make something DKU because you know what? Why not? Why not? Here's the next thing, okay? Next game. I think that Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts Aerial Challenge or Flight Challenge or whatever. See, it's a Flash game that was made to promote Banjo-Kazooie Lunchables, so I think it should be DKU because it's a game of Banjo and Kazooie. Why is it not DK? Oh, it's already for the ESRB. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. ESRB is stupid. It doesn't exist. Well, it does exist, but it's worthless now. Here's the thing. If I made a game on the App Store and I call it, and maybe I'll somehow get this made. It's called Whack a Hyle Russell, and I'm gonna get it rated by ESRB. And okay? And that's going to be an ESRB rated game. So you know what? I don't care about the ESRB rule. If I get that to happen, then I will destroy your ESRB rule because guess what? Anyone get an ESRB rating now. So you know what? It's over with for you guys. Stupid, the ESRB rule. Next. Yeah, Mini Mario and Friends should be DKU because Diddy Kong's I think that the mini Donkey Kong character is a Donkey Kong character. It's not a Mario character. Are you stupid? Ah! Okay. Okay. Point is that your rules are stupid, and here's the thing, okay? Government shouldn't be about rules. And I think President Donald Trump gets that the best. Because he tries to pass any bill that he could get. The healthcare bill, he could do that. Travel ban, banning people from North Korea, he could do it. If he could do it, you can do it. Okay? By the way, Bayonetta 2 should not be DKU, by the way, 'cause that's a stupid game. And Star Fox Zero sucks. Also, why the heck is freaking Saberwolf not DKU? Just make it DKU! Isn't it?
So much anger. Thank you for the 6 minutes, Mamechi. Jeff, Jesus. He touched upon so much here.
Yeah, I don't think that we can dissect all that. Come on, Mamechi.
We can't.
Pick a topic.
I know. He expects us just to, like, okay, let's just do this another 2 hours. I will say this much. The Lunchables, Banjo-Kazooie, Nuts and Bolts Aerial Challenge, that will be on the docket for the next tribunal. We had it planned for this one. We didn't get to it. We will get to that next time, I promise. What else did he bring up?
He said Soma Spirits, which was also on our docket, but we did not get to.
Yes. So, quick explanation here. This is an indie title available on Steam, featuring music by our DK Vine forum member and moderator, Agent Ape. So it features a small goldfish in the game, and according to Agent Ape, he intends that to be Royston. And we got a quote here, actually. The game is made by just me and another friend of mine. The goldfish was specifically added to piss people off on DK Vine, so it's pretty clearly creator intent. Soma Spirits Rebalance is the only one with Royston. Both Joy Royston and Sorrow Royston would be just Royston because the game lore doesn't refer to the characters by specific names. I have no idea what that means. Okay. Jeff, this does bring up a good point, and this is what I was hinting at with Lobo Destroyo earlier. A lot of people looked at Lobo Destroyo, especially when Chad and I got involved with it, as, oh, well, Lobo Destroyo is going to be DKU. They're going to make it work somehow. Here's the thing. I don't have the ability to just make something DKU. If I put a goldfish in something, or I use influence to put a goldfish in a game without Rare's involvement or a Rare staffer's involvement, that means nothing. That's a reference, but that's not the word of God. I don't have the word of God to make that goldfish Royston, as much as I might want it to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and here's the thing. So we already said, okay, Ed Bryan does not own the character of Royston, but he has a certain amount of legitimate creative direction over that character in a way that is not at all based on a legal boundary. That's not what we're getting at here, because obviously Rare doesn't own Donkey Kong and Ed doesn't own Royston. But he has a certain legitimacy to make claims about the character because of his involvement in the creation of that character. And right. For the same reason, we do accept his ability to put Royston in a game. And we don't accept the developers of Tracky Train's ability to put Mario in a game. That was something that we mentioned earlier. Just like the people who made Tracky Train can't actually put Mario or Dr. Eggman in their game, it's the same way that the dude who made Soma Spirits can't put Royston in his game. Even though Ed Bryan can. Right. Even though Ed Bryan doesn't own Royston. Because there's a degree of connection there that lends it legitimacy. Exactly.
And as much as I might want to put Royston in whatever I can, I'm just some schmuck. Just because I run a Donkey Kong website doesn't give me any authority over it. I have, authority over DK Vine's fanon, but it doesn't extend beyond that. I can maybe trickle that up to Rare through my incessant badgering and weirdness, but I myself don't have that ability. So, I would look at like any DK Viner, because there's lots of DK Viners in the actual industry at this point. Any DK Viner sticking goldfish in games, it's the equivalent of plumber in Tracky Train. That's my stance on it. We appreciate the effort and the reference, and it's delightful.
I hope that people understand that's the way it has to be.
It has to be, or else it's anarchy.
The DKU doesn't mean anything if anybody can make it. Just the thing is, none of the games we're covering are made because they want to be DKU. They just are made, and they happen to connect to the DKU. If anybody with an iPad can fucking make a DKU game, then I mean, it's over. That's it.
It's a slippery slope. It's a slip slide ride.
It's a slippery tracky track.
All it takes is this is why it was so worrisome when people were trying to retroactively get Drumstick in Shovel Knight, just because it's very easy for this stuff to mean nothing if we. What makes Donkey Kong Universe as a concept work is for 20 years now, predating DK Vine, we have taken it extremely seriously when it does not have any reason to be this serious. But it's that degree of seriousness that keeps it intact, that keeps the integrity there.
Right.
That makes this ludicrous bullshit function. So
the question,
I'm very defensive of it because I feel like, and I know you feel that same way, we're kind of guardians of this noble, idiotic cause.
Right. So the question is, where do we draw the line? And the answer is, we draw the line right here. If you are a DK Viner and you make a game that takes, that two people in their free time can make and throw it up in the App Store, I don't care if you get it rated by the ESRB. I don't care if you get a jokey tweet from a Rare alum that kind of jokes that it's legitimate. We can't lend official acknowledgement behind fan games that want to actively continue the DKU legacy. That's just not legitimate. There's no legitimacy to that. And that's where we draw the line.
And before the Renaissance, like in the dark era of the late buyout period, I could even see the argument like being made that this could have gone in a different direction if we were that desperate for this madness to continue. I could see us maybe bending that rule, but we're in a new golden age or a silver age of the Donkey Kong universe at this point. And there's just no room for it, really. I hope that doesn't come across as mean.
And I would love for DK Viners to make their own games because
absolutely. Check out Soma Spirits. Check it out. Support Agent Ape.
As fans of video games, we all have wanted to make our own video games at some point in our lives.
Yes.
So
and I love that there.
Yeah.
I love that there can be references to the Donkey Kong universe being sneaked, because snuck is not a word, being sneaked into these games. I think that's great, and that tickles me. Like that's fantastic. But we also have to. I'm sorry, we have sticks in our asses about this, but we've got to.
There has to be a line somewhere.
Yeah,
and that's it. Yeah.
But check out Soma Spirits Rebalance. It's got a goldfish in it.
It is a game with a goldfish that is a direct reference to Donkey Kong Universe.
And it's got kick-ass music, so check it out. I'm going to address two quick points, Memechi, because we gotta speed this up. I got to take off my robe and hit the golf course. And that's what judges do, right? We golf and we judge things. The rare cow does not make your Mickey Racer game DKU. The rare cow, I realize that's a fine line there, but the rare cow just can't make a DKU. And yeah, you can rail against drone rules all you want, but I'm sorry, the rare cow is not an individual character. It's a species of cows. You're basically saying cows make something DKU. Jeff,
I mean, there's a difference between all goldfish in all video games and Royston, an individual character. There's a reason for the drone rule, and that is because the DKU follows characters, and a drone is not a character. I mean, there's no way to tell if one example of the cow is the same individual cow as another cow, because the character doesn't have a name, it doesn't have a lineage or a story or a family. It's just a cow.
Yeah.
It's like saying,
exactly.
A tree. A Donkey Kong Country Returns styled tree makes a game DKU. It doesn't. It's just a tree.
Or one of those plasticky palm trees from the original DKC.
Right. It might. It's not DKU. It's just a tree. It's just a cow. Sorry.
That's also why landscapes don't make something DKU. Like for example, Greenwood Village in Jet Force Gemini does not make that game DKU.
Because it's just a cow.
Just a cow.
It's just a cow.
Just a cow.
It's just a cow. Other things that Mamechi brought up. He mentioned Mini Mario Amiibo Challenge. We already discussed it.
We already addressed that.
A+. The other one he mentioned was Kirby.
Yes.
Planet Robobo Bot.
Robobo
Bot.
Yes. So this actually, I'm trying to look up. I've heard conflicting things about Kirby Planet Robobo.
This is where we need to stand on that. Is that it sounds to me that it is similar in nature to Mini Mario and Friends, in that the amiibo implies a physical character presence. However, we need more information, and we'll probably have to address it on a future tribunal.
I agree. We will say this for the next tribunal because we just established precedent here with Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge. So all of a sudden, Kirby Planet is now potentially DKU, especially if it says inhale Donkey Kong and copy the whatever ability. If that's actually in the game, then we have something to discuss. But that's going to be a whole 2-hour argument debate. So let's table that for the next tribunal. Rhythm Heaven, no, Mamechi. Sorry, no, it's not. Give it up. It's a goldfish. That's it. Just a goldfish. There's no word of God.
Just goldfish. It's just a cow.
Just a cow. All right. Thank you for the 6 minutes in heaven, Mamechi. We've got 2 more calls, but thankfully they're short. So let's hear what they have to say.
Hey there, Kongversation. If a DKU game receives DLC, that new content becomes canon. But in the old days, when a DKU game received new content, we called it localization and ignored it entirely. I can get the language barrier bit, but the ESRB rating bit in 1999 versus 2017, Donkey Konga 3 is canon, and I don't give a shit what any of you people have to say. Thank you. Have a good day.
You say Donkey Konga 3? Is that what he said?
Donkey Konga 3, making the argument that even though it was only released in Japan, we should fully acknowledge it as canon.
Well,
in our.
Here's something we need to make a sort of a statement about.
Okay.
Whether or not a game is canon is a different question than whether or not a game is DKU. Mm-hmm. Because we consider the arcade games to be canon, but not DKU. I totally agree. I think probably maybe Donkey Konga 3 is canon.
Look, yeah.
Probably maybe.
Look, the events of Donkey Konga 3 may someday be referenced, especially because if a Japanese developer makes a Donkey Kong game and they love Donkey Konga 3 and they want to reference it, and then those references make their way into the Americas and Europe and Australia, then the events of Donkey Konga 3 happened because they were referenced. But you know what? We can't really play Donkey Konga 3 easily. I mean, we can play it through illegal means, sure. Or, if we have Japanese GameCubes, we can play it. But there's a reason DK Vine doesn't cover games that are released overseas, not in our language, our native language. It's because it's a chore and it's just not feasible.
This is one of those situations where the rule isn't so much about the canon as it is about just an arbitrary distinction we make about what games we choose to cover.
But Jeff, it means we're xenophobic. It means we're racist.
The DKU is not the universe itself that Donkey Kong resides in. It's the games that we as DK Vine choose to cover based on a subset of rules, many of which are arbitrary. And one of those rules are they have to be localized to Western countries. Because
why do you hate Japan, Jeff? Why do you hate Japan so much?
Well,
look at here. Jeff hates Japan, everybody.
I hate everywhere.
It's true, you do. I'm always getting accused of having some sort of bias against Japanese developers and games, and I don't know why. It's just on the forum, but I have a reputation because I have these sticking points, and I'm like, we can't cover Donkey Konga 3 because I don't know what they're saying.
It's hard. I mean, you have to think of the logistics of the fact that, a localization of between two different native, languages is going to completely change the content. Yes. The content of the game and the content of the canon are going to be different and irreconcilable.
Yes, and I'm sorry. In America, M. Bison is the general looking dude in the red. And yes, I know in Japan, M. Bison's the boxer, and that makes a lot more sense. But American canon is American canon, and that's the way it's been for 25 years.
Right. There are multiple canons, and
yes, and that's okay. Okay.
And we choose to follow the canon that is the one that we actually physically can follow with our native language.
The Western canon.
But it is a fact. It is a fact that the two canons are different because when they localize it to America, they change details. And so you're gonna, and when they localize it to Japan from an American or European-made game, they change details when they make it into Japanese. So you're gonna have different canons. There's going to be many different canons, and the one we choose to follow on DK Vine is the one that is in English.
Yeah. I mean, there's even different canons sometimes between North America and Europe. You look at the Jungle Beat Animal Buddy names, and that's something that I think they eventually changed for the new Play Control version, but they were different at one point, and I mean, that's weird, but being that Chad and I, we're Americans, and we started the site in 1999, so that's what we followed. And we can acknowledge there's different canons, and they're equally valid, but we really are, centered in our particular niche. That's not to say I wouldn't love to, cover... I mean, we do have sections on DK Vine for, Donkey Konga 3, in our honorable mention section. Maybe that's a little bit too flippant, but... we do acknowledge they exist.
It's a logistical concern. There's the fact that we have a difficulty or a total inability to consume those products. And two, even if we did, they would create a separate irreconcilable canon with the one that we currently have.
I do think this rankles some people. It rubs them the wrong way because so many Nintendo loyalists are Japanophiles. and because of that, they always view the Japanese canon as the true authentic one, and everything else.
But being a
rare-centric
fan site,
we are a rare-centric fan site, so obviously we're going to have a more Eurocentric, Western kind of mindset for this.
It's because of our white privilege, and you just have to accept it.
No, look, it's
logistical. That's all it is.
On Twitter, there is a Japanese kind of DK Vine equivalent who we follow each other on Twitter, and it's great to see their stuff. I love it. I love that there's a Japanese DK Vine equivalent, and I'm very glad they get to cover Donkey Konga 3 in the detail that we do not. But thank you for the call. One last call, Jeff. Let's finish this, shall we?
Hey guys, this is Josh from Off of the Geek Critique, and I would like to submit Super Mario Maker to the Tribunal, a game that I feel was perhaps unfairly dismissed because it was one of those filthy tech demo obstacle course Mario games. Okay, but seriously, I think the same kind of stuff that DK Vine ignores in order to include Smash Brothers could also be used to argue a case for Mario Maker. Now, we know in-game events trump Word of God. Well, the in-game descriptions for the event courses explicitly refer to you, the player, playing as the real characters. For instance, the one that got me thinking about this in the first place was this description for an Earthbound course. Quote, "Nobody can stop you when you're the Great Master Belch. Use your slime powers to assert dominance over, your own base. By the way, you have precisely 4 chances to transform into the Great Master Belch. So according to in-game content, you are playing as Master Belch in that stage. So maybe it would come down to like a creator's intent. Like if I design a stage in Mario Maker that contains a random mystery mushroom, and it happens to turn Mario into Donkey Kong, I might think of that as a costume. But if I design like a jungle-themed stage that immediately gives the player a mystery mushroom, which makes you play as DK, and make that the primary power-up, and make it clear as Nintendo did that the intent of this stage is that you are playing as Donkey Kong, I think there's enough in-game evidence to support that just being Donkey Kong. Same way we can ignore Word of God and in-game cutscenes alike to claim that Smash Bros. Trophies come to life are effectively the real characters. Ultimately, I think it can be argued either way, but in my DKU canon, if it looks like Diddy, sounds like Diddy, and is accompanied by music cues directly lifted from Donkey Kong Country, I'm gonna feel free to think of it as Diddy.
Well, thank you for that surprisingly crystal clear call, Josh Wallen from Off of the Geek Critique. All right, Jeff. Here's another curveball.
And we mentioned before we did not get to discussing Super Smash Brothers today. I think that's something we definitely need to put at the top of the docket on a future episode.
I would say that would be the Yooka-Laylee equivalent of the next tribunal, because that's something that's already been established as DKU, but we need to relitigate it because of the controversy related to that. So,
I want to make one thing clear here, though. I disagree with the notion that individual players get the liberty of having developers' intent in the stages they create in Mario Maker. Because I think that you can make a stage in Mario Maker, and you can claim what your intention is for that stage, but your intention as an individual player has no bearing on the official canons of Nintendo characters. And in a game in which they present you the tools to create your own stages, those are for fun, but they do not make any bearing on the actual context of the game. Now, the overall context of Mario Maker makes it explicitly clear that all incarnations of these characters are costumes. It calls them costumed Mario. You pick up the Mario, whatever the mushroom. It's a mushroom that gives you a costume. They make that clear in multiple contexts. And although he points to some of the stages you can play that give a little blurb, sort of a paragraph that sets up the context for the stage you're playing, those descriptions don't trump the fact that while playing the stage, if you get hit by an enemy, you lose your costume and you turn back into Mario. I think the overall context of the game of Super Mario Maker has a developer's intent and an in-game evidence that suggests the characters are not present. And I think that any instance within the game in which they contradict that or the player contradicts that, I think it's just role playing. You're allowed to role play, but that doesn't make it official.
Yeah, I mostly agree, Jeff. I mean, I pretty much completely agree. I could see the very abstract argument that perhaps these mushrooms transform you just like the Animal Buddy barrels in the Donkey Kong Country series actually transform you into that Animal Buddy, that the consciousness of Rambi moves into the physically transformed body of Diddy or Dixie. But I think that's a stretch.
But the in-game evidence suggests that the mystery mushroom is a power-up
it's
that
referred
gives...
to as a costume.
It gives you a costume. Yeah, it's referred to... It will transform you into Costume Mario that will give you a number of various costumes. So,
whereas with Smash Brothers, there's enough contradictory in-game evidence that you can make a good argument either way.
Like I said, we will get into Smash Brothers on its own.
We will.
Yeah.
And you know what? We can honestly, we can get into Super Mario Maker on the next one too. We can really get in depth with that because I feel like Josh does bring up some good points here. And while we can pretty much make it abundantly clear where we stand at the moment. As this episode has showed, we are both willing to hear things we may not necessarily agree with and come around to that way of thinking. So let this episode put the rest that Jeff and I are sourpuss stick in the muds. No. Our sticks are out of the mud. Joe Mud is not here, and we know how much he loves fucking mud. We do not love fucking mud. Isn't that right, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay. So I will bang the gavel and end this meeting of the DKU Tribunal. I do want to pose a logic question to you as we sign off here, though. And you know what? I don't even want an answer right now. I just want you at home to think about this. So you know how Ryan Stiles, beloved improv comic, is a Donkey Kong Universe character and a DK Vine Hall of Fame winner due to his appearance in Conquer Live and Reloaded's demo disc. Yes?
Yeah. I thought you were talking to the people at home, not me.
Well, both. I'm talking to everybody.
I'm at a home, so I guess it counts.
I'm talking to everybody. People, men, women, children around the world. I am talking to you all. So, Ryan Stiles is a DKU character. Now imagine this. A Whose Line Is It Anyway game is released. Is that Donkey Kong Universe? We'll end it there, folks. Have a good night.
This has been a File 2 production.